Chapter 1094. I am only a prince of the imperial family. Only Mo Jingli himself knows these things, Mo Jingli said. Mo Xiuyao shook his head, not believing his words at all. He smiled. But I feel that there are many things that even Mo Jingli doesn't know about. The one who truly knows should be the Empress Dowager. And this time, it's impossible for the Empress Dowager to not tell you at all about your visit to Glass City. Mo Jingyu was startled, lowering his eyes in silence. Mo Xiuyao leisurely leaned against the couch, calmly saying, when Mo Jingli was still alive, he had planted many spies in the northwest. Naturally, Mo Jingli wouldn't know about these things. But the Empress Dowager definitely knows. Originally, I didn't plan to pay attention to it. After all, there are no walls in this world that don't have cracks. Even if I get rid of these spies, there will always be people who will sharpen their heads and dig in. But this time, Mo Jingli's incident taught I a very important lesson. Being soft-hearted will only bring about big trouble. So, I decided to clean up those bugs, spray them with insecticide water, and set them on fire. Perhaps they won't grow in the future. Mo Jingyu's lips couldn't help but twitch. You call this being soft-hearted? Everyone in the world is a living Buddha. From the start, did you want to dig out the Chu state spies in the northwest, or did you want to capture Mo Jingli? After a long time, Mo Jingyu finally asked. Mo Xiuyao rubbed his chin, calmly asking, why can't I think of both? That old witch from the Chu state sure has guts. Using this to negotiate with I. The Maoist army can't attack Jiangnan for 20 years. How did she come up with such a cute condition? Mo Jingyu finally understood that all these unlucky matters originated from the Empress Dowager's own decision. He didn't know that the Empress Dowager had proposed such a condition to Mo Xiuyao. It was obvious that the Empress Dowager was still on guard against him. Sighing, Mo Jingyu said, I don't know about this. The Empress Dowager didn't even tell me about this. Do you think I would know about the list of the Chu state spies in the northwest? Mo Xiuyao sneered, if you didn't know, would you dare to make this trip? Mo Jingyu fell silent again. After a long time, he raised his head and asked, what benefits will I get if I tell you? Mo Xiuyao looked at him with a radiant smile. You don't have to be tortured. Mo Jingyu shook his head. No, you have to guarantee my safety. Although I agreed to help Mo Jingli, I didn't actually do anything. So, it shouldn't be considered as offending the Prince Ding mansion, right? I can tell you where the little heir is, but you have to guarantee my safety and let me leave the northwest. Mo Xiuyao looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. You didn't do anything. Forcing the Dechu state's little emperor to trick Mo Xiaobao out, does that count as doing something? Mo Jingyu's eyes widened. How did you? Mo Xiuyao waved his hand, and the door to the nearby prison opened. A 11 or 12-year-old youth wearing a bright yellow dragon robe walked in. Looking at Mo Jingyu, he softly called, Uncle Yu. Mo Jingyu stared at Mo Xiuyao in disbelief. It was you who told Mo Xiuyao. Just by looking at Mo Suiyan's appearance, he knew that he didn't suffer much. In other words, the people from the Prince Ding mansion didn't force him. He even saw a hint of joy and schadenfreude in Mo Suiyan's eyes. Mo Jingyu couldn't help but think that perhaps he had always underestimated this unremarkable little emperor. Mo Suiyan blinked, looking at Mo Jingyu with some grievance. Uncle Yu, I'm very sorry. I don't want to die, and I don't want to die with you. I'm very scared of Uncle Prince Ding. Haven't you always told me that Uncle Prince Ding is very powerful? Then why did you still want me to capture his son? I'll die. Mo Jingyu was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. How could he not see that this kid was simply pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? Mo Jingyu gritted his teeth. Mo Suiyun, do you know what you're doing? Mo Suiyun hesitated for a moment, but still nodded. Mo Xiaoyao lazily said, this child knows what he's doing better than you. How do you think I knew what you were going to do tonight? How did Shenyang not know about the ice magnolia in the main hall? It was you. Although he knew that he had been betrayed by Mo Suiyun, Mo Jingyu still didn't dare to believe that Mo Suiyun had started to collude with the Prince Ding mansion so early. You've cooperating with the Prince Ding mansion, aren't you afraid of asking a tiger for its skin? Mo Suiyun looked up at Mo Jingyu, saying seriously, Uncle Yu, if I didn't cooperate with the Prince Ding mansion, I might have already died. If I cooperate with Uncle Prince Ding, I'll still have a chance to live. Only by living can I have a chance to turn the tables. After taking a deep look at Mo Suiyun, Mo Jingyu finally fell back into his chair powerlessly, looking as though he had nothing to say. Mo Xiaoyao waved his hand, signaling for someone to bring Mo Suiyun back. The prison cell quieted down again. Mo Xiaoyao looked at Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li, saying with a bitter smile, Prince Ding is indeed a good schemer. He can play everyone in the world in the palm of his hand. Mo Xiaoyao slightly raised his eyebrows, not saying anything. Mo Jingyu looked at him and said, from the start, you knew that Mo Jingli wanted to make a move on Prince Ding. And you knew what he wanted to do. Then, Prince Ding being captured so easily by Mo Jingli was probably part of his plan, right? After suddenly realizing that everything was in the palm of someone else's hand, Mo Jingyu became clear-headed instead. He suddenly recalled that when Mo Xiaoyao's corpse came back to life, Mo Jingli and Lei Zhenting did not see any clues. His heart sank, and he said, the one captured by Mo Jingli was not the prince at all. No parents would be able to remain so calm and collected when their son was taken away, even if there were countless people secretly protecting him. Mo Xiaoyao sighed softly, looking at Mo Jingyu with some regret. Mo Jingyu, you've always been a smart person. It's a pity, you did a foolish thing in Ai's territory. I really had no choice but to take action against you. What benefits did Mo Jingli give you to dare to go against Ai? Mo Jingyu's face was pale. He closed his eyes and said in a low voice, the Imperial Jade Seal. The Imperial Jade Seal. Mo Xiaoyao raised his brows with interest. He turned to look at Yi Li and asked, Li, do you like the Imperial Jade Seal? Yi Li looked at him with a smile. The Imperial Jade Seal. What use does it have? It doesn't seem to have any use. Mo Xiaoyao was silent for a moment. It's just a bit bigger than the Prince Ding Mansion seal. Yi Li shook her head. If you think it's too small, you can carve the 9-dragon seal onto the Prince Ding Mansion's handwriting. Mo Xiaoyao nodded in agreement. He had no interest in the Imperial Jade Seal, and the one in Mo Jingli's hand could not be called the Imperial Jade Seal. At most, it could only be considered the Dechu State's Imperial Jade Seal. If he was interested, he could directly establish a country and take the throne. He could find any piece of jade and carve an Imperial Jade Seal for generations to come. Mo Xiaoyao's smile was somewhat bitter. Not everyone had Mo Xiaoyao's ability and boldness. For someone who had ambitions for the throne, the Imperial Jade Seal was definitely an irresistible temptation. Moreover, Mo Jingli's conditions were far more than just the Imperial Jade Seal. He had no choice but to agree. Chapter 1095. Mo Xiaoyao looked at him and calmly said, a mere Imperial Jade Seal shouldn't give you the courage to go against Ai. Is there anything else? Mo Xiaoyao did not speak. It was not that he still wanted to deny it to Mo Xiaoyao, but he really could not say it. If he said it, he would only die. Seeing his stubborn appearance, Mo Xiaoyao coldly laughed and said, you think that if you don't say it, I won't be able to find out? Mo Jingyu's face paled. He finally lowered his head and said hoarsely, "Prince, since you already know, why ask?" Mo Xiaoyao stared at him and said, "I just don't understand. As a member of the imperial family of the Dechu state, why would you sell your country for a mere few 100,000 taels of silver? In those 2 years, at least half of the people who were massacred in the north should be counted on your head, right?" Mo Jingyu's face was deathly pale. His lips trembled slightly. He closed his eyes for a long time before sighing and saying, "For what? I also don't know why. Perhaps it was to fight for some dignity. Clearly, they are all father's sons. Mo Jingqi and Mo Jingli, that idiot, ruined the Dechu state, but they still took turns to hold the power. Even if Mo Jingqi was killed by Mo Jingli, compared to letting outsiders like us hold the power, the Empress Dowager would still rather put her son under house arrest. They schemed against each other for the sake of power, while we, who worked hard for the Dechu state, had a noble status on the surface, but in reality, we couldn't even afford to buy a small toy. This kind of life, didn't Prince Ding also experience it? If not for the Prince Ding mansion's wealth, what kind of life would Prince Ding have had in those years? You think that you are smarter than Mo Jingqi and Mo Jingli? Mo Xiaoyao coldly laughed and asked. Mo Jingyu raised his hand to cover his eyes, saying sadly, "At first, I thought so. Now, I also don't know." He was not a deranged traitor. His moment of confusion back then had created an irreversible mistake. By the time he came to his senses, the Dechu state had already moved south. These years, he had assisted Mo Jingli with great care. Unfortunately, because of his imperial status, Mo Jingli had always been on guard against him. And now, someone finally came to settle this score. For a moment, Mo Jingyu appeared disheartened. He looked up at Mo Xiaoyao and said, "I'll tell you everything you want to know. How you want to punish me, up to you. Only, my children are still in Dechu state. I hope that the Prince Ding mansion can guarantee their safety. I don't ask for glory and wealth, I only ask for their safety." After saying these words, Mo Jingyu seemed to have aged several years. Mo Xiaoyao was silent for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Mo Jingyu understood Mo Xiaoyao. Although he was crafty and cunning, making his enemies gnash their teeth in hatred. But when he made a promise, he always kept it. Mo Jingyu nodded and said, "Bring me a pen and paper. I can only tell you what I know, but the Empress Dowager may not tell me everything." After a moment, Mo Xiaoyao and Yili left the prison cell with the information Mo Jingyu provided. In the prison cell, Mo Jingyu was still sitting on the large chair. His entire body was motionless, as though he had lost all signs of life. Mo Jingyu's fate had long been decided. Regardless of whether it was Mo Xiaoyao or the Prince Ding mansion, traitors who betrayed the country were severely punished. Whether he confessed or not, only death awaited him. But now, no one cared whether he lived or died. This night seemed to be extremely long. In a place where the citizens who were immersed in joy did not know, a bloody storm was secretly brewing. The hidden forces that Mo Jingli had been secretly proud of and relied on were removed one by one. The next day, many people would discover that the people who had been living by their side had suddenly disappeared without a trace. From then on, they would never be able to find any traces of them. At this time, Mo Xiaobao naturally did not know that while he was racking his brains on how to play with Mo Jingli, his father had already finished many things. At this time, Mo Xiaobao was lying on the roof with a smile, peeking down through the cracks in the roof. Daring to climb onto the roof of a person whose martial arts were not low in this heavily guarded place, it was enough to show that Mo Xiaobao had quite a bit of confidence in his qigong. The shadow guards who were secretly protecting him were willing to let him climb onto Mo Jingli's roof, proving that they were quite confident in their prince's ability. At this time, Mo Xiaobao had a sinister smile on his face as he stared at the furious man below. Everything in the room had been smashed clean. He originally wanted to viciously slap Mo Xiaoyao's face and even take his life, but in the end, it did not go as he wished. Instead, he became a joke. How could Mo Jingli not be angry? After venting his anger, Mo Jingli finally calmed down a little and said in a deep voice, "Bring wine." Not long later, someone came in with wine and placed it on the table. Mo Jingli looked at the guard who brought the wine in with annoyance and said in a deep voice, "Get out." Ever since he was injured by Mo Xiaoyao in Liyang, Mo Jingli did not like to interact with others. Other than when it was necessary, he usually brought himself alone. This naturally made the people around him feel strange. After all, although Mo Jingli was not considered a pervert in the past, the number of women by his side was not small. However, they had been on the run all this time, so Mo Jingli's lack of interest in women did not attract too much attention. Mo Jingli sat at the table and poured a cup of wine into his mouth. The burning sensation of the strong wine made his eyes a little bloodshot. Tonight's huge defeat and the faint fear in his heart made him unable to resist pouring cup after cup of wine into his mouth. On the roof, Mo Xiaobao smelled the pungent smell of wine and wrinkled his nose. He smiled and took out an extremely small pill, crushed it into powder and threw it in through the cracks of the roof. The light powder casually floated, some landing in the wine cup, some landing on Mo Jingli's body. Mo Xiaobao frowned in disappointment and helplessly sighed. If he directly threw the pill into Mo Jingli's wine, it would definitely be discovered by Mo Jingli. Although it would not be easily discovered if he crushed it into powder, he was afraid that the medicinal effect would not be enough. In fact, if it was not for Mo Jingli's irritation that made him pour down the wine, he was afraid that the powder he scattered would be discovered by others. Reality was like this, Mo Xiaobao could only helplessly accept it. He looked at Mo Jingli below and quietly left the roof. Not long later, the originally quiet courtyard suddenly became lively. For some reason, a fire suddenly appeared in the backyard. Originally, a fire was not a big deal, but at this very sensitive time, any abnormality could attract the shadow guards of the Prince Ding mansion. The entire courtyard became a mess. Other than the guards at the door, everyone else was busy putting out the fire and looking for traces. Mo Jingli, who had been drinking, suddenly heard the noise and became even more displeased. He abruptly opened the door and walked out, shouting sternly, "What's going on?" A guard hurriedly came forward to reporting to Your Highness, the backyard suddenly caught on fire. Chapter 1096. Fire in the backyard. Mo Jingli frowned and quickly reacted. He rushed to Qin Lai's room. He kicked the door open. Sure enough, it was empty inside. There was no trace of Qin Lai. Idiot! Go and find him. Mo Jingli turned back and slapped the guard behind him, roaring. This was Glass City, the Prince Ding mansion. As long as they got out of this small courtyard, it was as difficult as ascending to the sky for them to catch Mo Yuchen again. After thinking about it, Mo Jingli decided to leave this place as soon as possible. Outside the small courtyard, Mo Xiaobao and Qin Lai handed the sleeping little prince of Nanzhao to Leng Junhan and Su Jiroe, who had been waiting outside. They ordered them to send the little guy back to the Prince Ding mansion. Su Jiroe grabbed Mo Xiaobao, who was about to escape, and asked, "Where are you going?" Mo Xiaobao smiled and said, "Watch the show. There's nothing for us to do." He lit a fire and informed the shadow guard of the Prince Ding mansion of Mo Jingli's exact location. Then the task was completed. His royal father couldn't possibly expect a 10-year-old child to destroy Mo Jingli, could he? Since there's nothing else, let's go back to the Prince Ding mansion together. Su Jiroe said seriously. How could that be? Mo Xiaobao was shocked. Before Su Jiroe reacted, he had jumped a few feet away. He smiled and said to Sujirue, "Cousin Jirue, I still have something to do. You and little dummy Leng send this kid back to Aunt Anshi. This is an order." After that, Mo Xiaobao didn't wait for Sujirue's answer. He directly jumped over the wall and disappeared in the alley again. Qin Lai held a little face that was exactly the same as Mo Xiaobao's. He patted Sujirue and said, "Don't worry, I'll look after him." After that, he also jumped over the wall. The fair and tender Leng Xiaodai was still fair and tender in a black night suit. She glanced at the gloomy Sujirue carefully and asked in a low voice, "What should we do?" Sujirue glanced at the baby in Leng Juanhan's hand worriedly and said in a low voice, "Guards." A man in black appeared behind Sujirue. "Young master." Sujirue waved his hand and said, "Send Junhan and the little prince of Nanzhao back to the Prince Ding mansion." After saying that, he also jumped over the wall. Although he came from a scholarly family, Sujirue's Qigong was still very impressive. In the alley, only the shadow guard and Ling Junhan were left looking at each other. After a while, Ling Junhan put the child in the hands of the shadow guard and said, "Uncle." The shadow guard silently rolled his eyes. "I know. Send the little prince of Nanzhao back to the Prince Ding mansion." Ling Junhan nodded with satisfaction and followed him to climb the wall. Soon, only the shadow guard was left in the dark alleyway, holding the baby in his arms as he silently stared at the empty wall. It was slightly bleak. In the darkness, two tall and handsome men stood on the roof, looking at the scene below with amusement. Han Mingxi pointed at the shadow guard holding the baby and laughed until he was convulsing. "Brother, our little heir and these little rascals are very interesting." Beside him, young Master Mingyu was leaning against the roof. The faint moonlight shone on his handsome face, reflecting a faint smile. He looked at Han Mingxi and said, "The heir's Qigong is very good. You must have put in a lot of effort." The smile on Han Mingxi's face instantly froze. He laughed dryly and looked at his elder brother. He didn't know how his elder brother could tell that the little heir's Qigong was taught by him. There was clearly no trace of him. Young Master Feng Yu's unique Qigong was indeed very good, but his reputation back then wasn't that good either. Although no one mentioned the name of young Master Feng Yu in these years, Han Mingxi still didn't want his reputation to affect Mo Xiaobao negatively. So when Mi Xiaobao came to ask for guidance on Qigong, Han Mingxi specially improved his own Qigong quite a bit. It was a pity that Han Mingxi didn't know that a few years later, a certain someone's reputation in the pugilistic world would only be worse than his. It would be a waste of young Master Feng Yu's efforts. Han Mingyue shook his head and smiled as he looked at the lonely shadow guard below. "You're right. These little rascals are quite interesting. They will definitely become the little heir's confidants and most trusted brothers in the future." The friendship between these children easily reminded him of the friendship he had with Mo Xiuya when he was young. Although they were already older than these children when they first met, their relationship was truly closer than that of real brothers. It was a pity. Han Mingxi also knew that his elder brother was thinking of something. He went up and patted Han Mingyue's shoulder. "Elder brother, it's all in the past. Didn't Mo Xiuya no longer blame you?" Han Mingyue smiled and nodded. He stood up and said, "Let's go and take a look. They're still children after all. Don't let anything happen to them." Prince Ding said that there's no need to care about them if their lives aren't in danger. "I know. I also want to see how the little heir is going to torment Mo Jingli." Han Mingyue felt that Mo Jingli's smile was a little strange when he left. He secretly prayed for Mo Jingli in his heart. Glass City was neither big nor small. It might be easy to find a group of people, but it wasn't easy to find a single person, especially at night without alerting the commoners. Mo Jingli quickly sensed that there was something wrong with the fire in the small courtyard. In addition, with the disappearance of Mo Xiaobao and Nanzhao's little heir, he immediately understood that their residence had been exposed. He did not stay any longer. He only brought his two most trusted subordinates and left the small courtyard in the midst of the chaos. However, they soon discovered one thing. The Great Chu's spies in Glass City had all been uprooted in less than 2 hours. No matter if it was the Dechu State's imperial family that originally existed, or Mo Jingli's men that were planted after the Mahist army became independent, or Mo Jingli's own men. They were all under the control of the Prince Ding mansion. Moreover, Mo Xiuyao did not seem to care that Mo Jingli knew this news. Everywhere they went, they saw the Prince Ding mansion soldiers eyeing them covetously. Thus, he had no choice but to flee once again. After busying himself for nearly 2 hours and running through the entire Glass City, he couldn't even find a place to stay. Instead, he was so tired that he was panting. It was already close to midnight. In the end, Mo Jingli was forced into a corner and decided to risk it all. He headed in the direction of the Prince Ding mansion. At this time, Mo Xiaobao, Qin Lai, and the others were also panting as they ran through Glass City. Little heir Mo flew into a rage when he accidentally lost track of Mo Jingli. "We're going to die anyway. Why are we running so fast? What do we do now? Where are we going to find him?" After playing for an entire night, the tired Ling Junhan was a little dispirited. "We're going to die anyway. Even if I'm Mo Jingli, I have to run faster." Mo Xiaobao rolled his eyes and turned to look at Qin Lai. Qin Lai shrugged, indicating that he also did not know where Mo Jingli ran off to. Mo Xiaobao was a little aggrieved. If he could not mess with Mo Jingli, he would die a horrible death. "Yo, little heir, why are you still outside so late?" A laughing voice came from the top of the wall. The four looked up and saw Han Mingxi sitting leisurely on the wall, smiling at them. Mo Xiaobao's eyes lit up. "Uncle Han, do you know where Mo Jingli ran off to?" Chapter 1097. Han Mingxi tilted his head to look at him. "Uncle Han. Is the little heir calling me? I'm really overwhelmed by your favor." Mo Xiaobao had no qualms about acting spoiled. He directly jumped onto the wall and sat beside Han Mingxi. He smiled and said, "Uncle Han, you're the best. Why are you here so late at night? You must have seen where Mo Jingli ran to, right?" Han Mingxi looked at him with a smile. "So what if I saw him?" Mo Xiaobao looked at him anxiously. His clear eyes were filled with the words seeking an answer. Han Mingyue helplessly rubbed his little head and said, "He went in the direction of the Prince Ding mansion." Prince Ding mansion? Mo Xiaobao frowned. Isn't he seeking death by running to the Prince Ding mansion now? It's good that it's night now. In another 2 hours, it will be daybreak. At that time, he'll still be dead. Han Mingyue appeared on the wall. She looked at Mo Xiaobao and smiled faintly. Since he's going to die either way, why not take a gamble? Mo Xiaobao tilted his little head and thought for a moment. He nodded and said, "All right. I'll go back first." He hoped that Mo Jingli could hold on long enough to break into the Prince Ding mansion again. He nimbly jumped off the high wall. Mo Xiaobao pulled the other children and dashed in the direction of the Prince Ding mansion. He was afraid that Mo Jingli would be killed by his royal father if he was late. As he dashed, Mo Xiaobao took the time to think in his heart. Was the drug he had given her effective? Did it lose its effect after too long? Or was there really too little of it? It had no effect on Mo Jingli. Although it was already the middle of the night, the Prince Ding mansion was still brightly lit. In the main hall, the guests from various countries were still enjoying the dancing and drinking. The main hall was filled with singing and dancing. In any case, Prince Ding's intentions were clear. There would be a lot of things happening in Glass City tonight. If anything happened, he could only blame it on his own bad luck. In that case, why not just stay in the Prince Ding mansion, drink and make merry without caring about anything else? The Prince Ding mansion was responsible for their safety after all. Therefore, even when there were some accidents that happened to women, the envoys from various countries were still having a good time with each other. Father, Mother, Xiaobao is back. In the inner courtyard of the Prince Ding mansion, Xiaobao happily skipped into the reception pavilion and threw himself into Yili's arms. Mo Xiuyao, who was sitting by the side, frowned in displeasure. He lifted his hand and pulled Xiaobao out of Yili's arms. Look at how old you are. Why are you still throwing yourself into Lili's arms? What if you hurt your mother? Mo Xiaobao struggled unhappily. I won't hurt mother. Xiaobao loves mother the most. Seeing her son come back safely, Yili also let out a sigh of relief. She hurriedly rescued her son from Mo Xiuyao's arms. She touched his little face and asked, "Where did Tian go? Are you hurt?" Xiaobao disdainfully curled his lips and said, "Mo Jingli, that idiot. He didn't even see this prince's face. How could he be hurt? But he ran away." Han Mingxi said that he ran to the Prince Ding mansion. "Mother, did you kill him already?" Yili helplessly sighed and said, "He hasn't come yet." "You've done very well. Mother and father will take care of the rest. You just have to be obedient." Xiaobao shook his head. "No, I must see Mo Jingli. Did the medicine in his body have any effect?" Mo Xiuyao sat by the side, looking at his son critically. He said to Yili, "Lili, don't comfort him. What did he do well? He's already in front of us and he still let Mo Jingli run away. If we knew earlier, we would have killed Mo Jingli in the mansion. Now we can rest in peace." Xiaobao was furious. "It's clearly your shadow guard that came too late. Do you think this prince can beat Mo Jingli and his many guards?" Xiaobao compared his height and then faked a height, glaring angrily at Mo Xiuyao. Mo Xiuyao snorted in disdain. "Even if you can't beat him, can't you capture him with your wits? I wasn't much taller than you when I went to the battlefield at 14. These words weren't false. Xiaobao had grown crazily in this half a year, to the point where his originally round face had disappeared. Although he was only 11 years old, compared to a normal 13 or 14-year-old child, he wasn't shorter. Capture him with my wits? Xiaobao frowned and began to consider this possibility. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't have a way to capture Mo Jingli, but at that time, he was in the mood to play and didn't consider that there was a more efficient way. Carefully glancing at Mo Xiuyao, Xiaobao blinked his large eyes and said shyly, "But, father said, wouldn't that be fun?" Mo Xiuyao looked at Xiaobao with disappointment, saying, "Idiot. You wouldn't have." Prince Ding rarely whispered in his son's ear. The more Xiaobao listened, the brighter his eyes became. At the side, Yili only felt her eyelids twitching. Just by looking at Xiaobao's evil smile that made people unable to look at him, she knew that Mo Xiuyao definitely didn't teach him anything good. Unable to continue watching, Yili gave a light snort. One adult and one child quickly sat down obediently and looked at Yili. Yili sighed and said to Mo Xiuyao, "Don't teach him any nonsense, he's still a child." Mo Xiuyao smiled at Yili. "I know, Li, I didn't teach him any nonsense." It was rare for father and son to be on the same side. Xiaobao nodded heavily, and father is teaching son how to deal with bad people. Bad people? Mo Xiuyao secretly waved his hand at Xiaobao. Xiaobao immediately understood. "Mother, son is tired and will go to sleep first. Good night, mother." After saying that, Xiaobao rushed out like a gust of wind. Mo Xiaoyao looked at Yili with a smile, smiling innocently. Xiaobao's qigong is really good. Lili, I didn't teach him that. Looking at his innocent smile, Yili helplessly sighed. I heard what you said to him. Saying that it was a mess was being polite. What kind of father would teach his son to use those low-class methods to deal with the enemy? Mo Xiaoyao smiled wholeheartedly. Methods and methods are divided into useful and useless, not high-class and low-class. At Xiaobao's age, he can't be compared to Mo Jingli at all. If he can't beat Mo Jingli, then even high-class methods are useless. The future heir of the Prince Ding mansion definitely couldn't be a noble and modest gentleman. Prince, Princess Consort. The Queen of Nanzhao and Genom of Gojoseon of Xiling request an audience. Outside the door, Qin Feng reported in a low voice. Mo Xiaoyao nodded, let them in. After a while, Princess Anxi and the others walked in together. Princess Anxi was holding the little prince in her arms, her beautiful face full of love and joy. Yili smiled at the three people. It's so late, why are you all here? Lei Tingfeng looked at Yili and her husband, then looked at Princess Anxi and her husband, smiling, everyone hasn't rested yet. I can't stand the alcohol, so I came out for a walk. I happened to meet the Queen of Nanzhao and her husband. I heard that they came to request an audience with the Prince and Princess Consort, so I also came to ask for a cup of tea. Princess Consort, please don't blame me. Yili smiled. Genom of Gojoseon is too polite, please sit. Then she ordered someone to serve tea. Chapter 1098. Princess Anxi didn't let go of the child for even a moment. She had lost and found her son again. Princess Anxi, who had always been strong, almost burst into tears. Yili looked at Princess Anxi with a smile and asked, how is the little prince? Princess Anxi nodded. Sure is fine. We came over to thank the little prince. Is the little prince back? Yili smiled. He had a wild day outside. He went back to his room to rest. Princess Anxi nodded regretfully and said with a smile, I'll thank the Crown Prince personally today. Yili looked at the baby in Princess Anxi's arms, who was looking at her curiously with his big round eyes. She smiled. Can I hold the child? Princess Anxi gently placed the child in Yili's arms. The baby looked at Yili with his big eyes. He didn't cry. Princess Anxi couldn't help but smile. This child, he's become bolder after going out. He used to be very shy with strangers. Speaking of this, Princess Anxi felt sad when she thought of how her son had suffered in the past few days. Newborns weren't like older children. Even if he had suffered, he couldn't say it out loud. This made people worry and feel sorry for him. Yili looked at Princess Anxi and comforted her softly. The little prince looks fine. Did you get someone to check on him? Princess Anxi nodded. Sir Shenyang personally checked on Sure. There's no problem. He might have been shocked. He'll be fine in a few days. That's good. Lei Tingfeng, who had been sitting next to them, looked at Yili and Mo Xiaoyao in surprise. The little prince brought back the Nanzhao prince. Mo Xiaoyao smiled carelessly. That kid was fooling around. Coincidentally, Mo Jingli put the little prince with him. He set a fire and took advantage of the chaos to bring the little prince back. Mo Xiaoyao said it so casually, as though Mo Xiaobao was just fooling around and leaving after setting a fire. However, Lei Tingfeng and the others understood how difficult it was for an 11-year-old child to set a fire under Mo Jingli's heavy guard and escape. Other things aside, if it was a child of this age from an ordinary family, they would probably be unable to do anything but cry. The little prince is so promising at such a young age. Like father, like son. Lei Tingfing praised. Princess Anqi and Pu nodded in agreement. They were extremely grateful to Mo Xiaobao for saving their son. Lei Tingfing sipped his tea and asked casually, Prince Ding, Princess Consort, I wonder if Mo Jingli. Hearing Lei Tingfing's question, Princess Anqi and Pu couldn't help but look at Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao. Once bitten, twice shy. To them, Mo Jingli was already a target that had to be eradicated immediately. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. Someone will take over soon. Lei Tingfing raised his eyebrows and looked at Mo Xiaoyao in disbelief. With Prince Ding and Princess Consort's abilities, Mo Jingli can't jump around so easily. Mo Xiaoyao smiled. He's just a clown. Genom of Gojoseon doesn't need to care about him. This kind of small matter can be left to Mo Yuchen to deal with. If I get involved, it will seem like I'm bullying others. It wasn't that Prince Ding had no experience in bullying others with his power. However, when it came to bullying someone like Mo Jingli, Prince Ding still felt that it was a little inferior. A trace of surprise flashed through Lei Tingfing's eyes. He didn't expect that the Prince Ding mansion had begun to cultivate the ability of the Crown Prince so early. Because in Lei Tingfing's view, although Mo Xiaoyao might be a very strict father, Yi Li was definitely a soft-hearted mother who loved her child. Thinking of how he was complacent under his father's wings when he was 20 years old, Lei Tingfing could only shake his head secretly and feel ashamed of himself. Princess Anqi was also a person who began to deal with political affairs as the crown princess when she was a teenager. Naturally, she was not surprised by Mo Xiaoyao's words. But because Mo Xiaobao saved her son, she was very grateful. The courtyard where Mo Xiaobao lived was in the southeast corner of the inner courtyard of the Prince Ding mansion. In order to let their son have enough private space, Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao put a large courtyard and a small garden in the mansion, which was second only to the main courtyard, into Mo Xiaobao's territory after he reached the age of living alone. They generally didn't care what Mo Xiaobao did or how he arranged it. The area of this courtyard was not inferior to the whole mansion of an ordinary rich family. There were many rooms. Many times, Su Jirue, Ling Junhan and others would also stay here for a few days. When Mo Xiaobao returned to his courtyard, Ling Junhan and Su Jirue had already fallen asleep. They were the youngest and had been running around with Mo Xiaoyao and Qin Lai for a whole day. They were already tired. As soon as they came back, they washed and went to bed. Mo Xiaobao didn't disturb them and went directly to his room. As soon as he opened the door, Mo Xiaobao was stunned. A cold and sharp thing was pointed at his waist. There was a strange osmanthus fragrance behind him. Mo Xiaobao wrinkled his nose. The smell was very familiar. Mo Jingli. A hand quickly pressed a few times on his body. Several important acupoints on Mo Xiaobao's body were sealed. Then a hand pulled him over. In the somewhat dark room, a tall and gloomy man was staring at him with malicious eyes. It was Mo Jingli. Mo Jingli dragged Mo Xiaobao, whose acupoints were sealed, into the inner room and lit a candlestick on the side. The room gradually brightened. Mo Xiaobao curiously looked at the man in front of him. He was wearing the costume of the shadow guard of the Prince Ding mansion. His overly pale face and gloomy eyes made him look like a ghost crawling out of hell. Mo Jingli, you're really capable. Mo Jingli stared at Mo Xiaobao and gloomily said. Mo Xiaobao shrugged and said with a smile, you're not bad either. You were actually able to silently sneak into this Shizi's courtyard. Who helped you? With just you alone, you definitely don't have the ability to silently avoid the shadow guard of the mansion and enter this Shizi's courtyard. Mo Jingli smiled with a strange expression. Unfortunately, you'll never have the chance to know. Mo Xiaobao raised his eyebrows and looked at Mo Jingli. I say. You're not planning to kill me right now, are you? You guessed right. Mo Jingli sneered. If I knew you were so cunning, I would have killed you directly when I caught you. It would have saved me so much effort. Mo Xiaobao's face suddenly drooped. Even if you kill me, you can't get out. Mo Jingli smiled. If I can get in, I can get out. Mo Xiaobao was silent for a long time. Finally, he helplessly sighed. You're right. Do it. If he didn't say so, Mo Jingli might have immediately done it. But since he said so, Mo Jingli hesitated and suspiciously stared at him. What conspiracy do you have? Mo Xiaobao rolled his eyes. I'm about to die. What conspiracy can I have? Can I mourn for my short life? Chapter 1099. Mo Jingli was silent. Mo Xiaobao thought for a bit before raising his head and asking, right, after I die, remember to stay away from me. No, remember to stay away from me. What do you mean? Mo Jingli said in a deep voice. Mo Xiaobao said with a bit of guilt, before in the small courtyard, did you drink a lot of wine? So what? He did drink a lot of wine, but that amount of wine was not enough to affect him. Mo Xiaobao tapped his fingers together. I was careless and added something into the wine. Maybe. I won't die so well. In short, you have to stay away from me. Seeing Mo Xiaobao's serious expression, Mo Jingli was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He roared in a low voice, Mo Yuchen. You can't blame me for this. Mo Xiaobao said seriously. What kind of drug did you give me? Mo Xiaobao shook his head and looked at him with sympathy. Since everyone is going to die, what kind of drug is not important, right? If you can kill yourself before the poison takes effect, it won't affect you at all. The irritable Mo Jingli suddenly stopped. He looked at Mo Xiaobao for a long time before laughing out loud. We forgot, you little brat. You're just as crafty as your father. I was almost fooled by you. Mo Xiaobao rolled his eyes and was not in a hurry. This one said, I only ask you to stay away from this one when you die. What kind of drug did you give me? Mo Jingli was furious. A person like Mo Jingli, what he lacked the most was the courage to go all out, so it was easy for him to be scared by some groundless things. If Mo Xiaobao directly told him what drug he gave him, he would not be so nervous. It was because of Mo Xiaobao's attitude that he felt uneasy. In one word, he was overthinking. Mo Xiaobao looked at him innocently, his eyes clearly saying, die early, reincarnate early. After staring at Mo Xiaobao for a long time, Mo Jingli's eyes flashed with a bloody light. He finally made up his mind and pulled out a dagger to stab Mo Xiaobao in the chest. Since you don't want to talk, then keep it for yourself. Mo Jingli, are you looking for me? Ha, idiot, you can't even recognize people clearly, so what are you doing out here? A clear and cheerful voice sounded from outside the door, carrying with it countless malicious taunts. Mo Jingli was stunned and looked at the person in front of him in disbelief. Mo Xiaobao, who was forced to sit on the stool, squeezed out a helpless and bitter smile. I really don't know what drug he gave you. Also, my surname is not Mo, you are not Mo Yuchen. Little Mo shrugged. Why don't you go out and take a look? Mo Jingli grabbed Mo Xiaobao and carried him all the way to the door. Through the gap of the door, Mo Jingli could clearly see a handsome young man in black standing in the courtyard. He looked exactly the same as Mo Xiaobao in front of him. But under the moonlight, those eyes did not hide the disdain and gloating towards the people in the room. Do you expect that I will let you go this time? Who gave you the confidence to think that you can hurt I's son in the Prince Ding mansion? Come out by yourself, I will let you die a little easier. In the room, Mo Jingli tightly held Qin Lai against the door. Qin Lai was a little uncomfortable. He moved uncomfortably inside. It's useless to hold me. I am just a shadow guard of the crown prince. Do you think the prince will let you live for me? Also, even if I let you go, the crown prince has poisoned you. You can't run far. Mo Jingli stared at him with a ferocious smile. Are you encouraging me to take you down with me? Qin Lai tactfully shut up. He didn't want to die. Even if he died, he didn't want to die together with Mo Jingli. Mo Xiaoyao, tell all your archers to get away. For those holding hostages, the thing they were most afraid of was the archers hiding in the dark, making it impossible for them to guard against them. Especially the archers of the Prince Ding mansion, they are all excellent archers. Chapter 1100. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and raised his hand. No problem. Why should I believe you? Mo Jingli asked suspiciously. Mo Xiaoyao said impatiently, how would I know how to make you believe me? If you want to come out, then come out. If you don't want to come out, then forget it. Perhaps because he heard Mo Xiaoyao's impatience, Mo Jingli finally relaxed a little. He had too little power in his hands. He only had a shadow guard impersonating the crown prince of the Prince Ding mansion, which was not enough to negotiate with Mo Xiaoyao. Let me leave the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Jingli gritted his teeth and said. Mo Xiaoyao was immediately amused. He looked lazily at the closed door and laughed. Mo Jingli, do you think I am playing games with you? Or do you think I want to play a few games with you? Do you have that kind of value? After a while, the door was finally opened from the inside. Mo Jingli walked out with Qin Lai in his hand. Mo Jingli used one hand to hold Qin Lai in front of him, and the other hand held a dagger to Qin Lai's back. As long as there was any movement, he could be the first to stab the dagger into Qin Lai's back. Mo Xiaoyao faintly glanced at Mo Jingli. Are you finally willing to come out? Now, what do you plan to do? Mo Jingli vigilantly looked at the group of people in the courtyard. Even if there were no archers, with these people alone, he would not be able to escape the Prince Ding mansion alive. In the candlelight, he saw Mo Xiaobao standing beside Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li. As expected, he looked exactly the same as the person in front of him. But the light in the child's eyes made him certain that this child was the real crown prince of the Prince Ding mansion, Mo Yuchen. This was because the way this annoying brat looked at him was exactly the same as his father's when he was young. Mo Jingli grabbed Qin Lai and stared at Mo Xiaoyao. If you don't want this brat to die, then back away. Mo Xiaoyao's expression was calm. It was clear that he did not care about Mo Jingli's threat. What? Crown Prince? You are the same as your father. You don't care about this brat's life. He was caught because of you, right? Mo Jingli smiled maliciously at Mo Xiaobao. Seeing Qin Lai's pained expression, Mo Xiaobao's originally smiling face instantly turned serious. Glaring hatefully at Mo Jingli, he said, let him go. Let me go. Mo Jingli said without hesitation. Impossible. Mo Xiaobao gritted his teeth. Seeing him angry, Mo Jingli's mood became better. Smiling, he said, then you come over and exchange with him. Okay. Mo Xiaobao said in a clear voice. Everyone was stunned. Even Mo Jingli, who had proposed the condition, had said it with a hint of mockery. He had never thought that Mo Xiaobao would agree so readily. Crown Prince, please reconsider. The people beside Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li were shocked and quickly stopped him. In their eyes, 100 Qin Lai's life was not as important as one Mo Xiaobao. It was not that they looked down on other people's lives, but in the eyes of anyone in the world, no one would think that a shadow guard's life was more precious than the future heir of the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Jingli was stunned. Cautiously looking at Mo Xiaobao, he said, are you serious? Mo Xiaobao proudly raised his little chin and said, "Of course. If this crown prince is afraid of you, I'm not Mo Yuchen." Mo Jingli looked at Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li who were standing to the side. In the crowd of people trying to persuade him, Mo Xiaobao's parents were especially quiet. "Mother." Mo Xiaobao looked up at Yi Li. Yi Li's lips curled into a faint smile. Rubbing Mo Xiaobao's little head, she said, "Xiaobao has grown up. You can make your own decision. You must be careful." Mo Xiaobao's little face lit up. Nodding heavily, he said, "This child knows. Thank you, mother." Saying this, Mo Xiaobao raised his hand towards Mo Jingli to indicate that he did not have any weapons on him. Then he slowly walked towards them. When he was 3 steps away from Mo Jingli, Mo Xiaobao stared at Mo Jingli and said, "Let go of Qin Lai." With Mo Xiaobao as his hostage, Mo Jingli naturally did not care about Qin Lai. Not to mention that he could not bring 2 hostages with him. Raising one hand, he pushed Qin Lai out and his other hand grabbed at Mo Xiaobao. "Go die." Qin Lai who was pushed out was not thrown out. Instead, he twisted his body and charged towards Mo Jingli. At the same time, Mo Xiaobao also threw a kick towards Mo Jingli's face. Mo Jingli was suddenly attacked, but he was not unprepared. With Mo Xiaobao's craftiness, Mo Jingli knew that he could not be caught so quickly. But he had to take a gamble. Otherwise, even if he had Qin Lai, he would not be able to escape death. Therefore, when Mo Xiaobao kicked towards his face, Mo Jingli had already dodged to the side and once again grabbed at Mo Xiaobao's vital point. Qin Lai's pressure point was blocked. Although he had opened it a little, it was not easy for him to have the strength to hit Mo Jingli. Very quickly, he was kicked to the side by Mo Jingli. The shadow guard at the side quickly went forward to help him up and found that he was not heavily injured. Feng Zhiyao and the others who came over wanted to help Mo Xiaobao but were stopped by Mo Xiuyao. "Prince." Feng Zhiyao frowned, looking at Mo Xiuyao with disapproval. With Mo Xiaobao's martial arts, he was definitely not Mo Jingli's opponent. Mo Xiuyao calmly said, "Don't worry, let him try. If you guys were willing to fight with him normally, you wouldn't be so worried now." Mo Xiaobao was the heir of the Prince Ding mansion and had a high status. Although he was hardworking in martial arts, his status was different. No matter if it was a sparring partner or a professor, very few people dared to fight him seriously, much less risk their lives. This also led to Mo Xiaobao's lack of actual combat experience. In the past, Mo Xiuyao still had a few royal families that he didn't get along with, and he would occasionally beat them up. Since young, Mo Xiaobao could be said to have gotten whatever he wanted, and everything went smoothly. Mo Xiaobao and Mo Jingli's fight could be said to be exciting. Although he was short and his internal energy was weak. But Mo Xiaobao, who had been in Qilin for a long time and had a slightly skewed worldview, was ruthless and cunning. There was no sign of nervousness or restraint from fighting for the first time. With this kind of performance, if he was 2 years older, people would believe that he killed people like flies. Lei Dingfeng, who was standing at the side, could not help but sigh in admiration as he watched Mo Xiaobao's performance. With a son like this, the Prince Ding mansion would not decline for the next 50 years. "Prince, are we raising the heir or raising assassins?" "The little heir's martial arts. Why does it look like he's even more ruthless than those people from the Yanwang Chamber of Commerce?" Feng Zhiyao lamented. The assassins from the Yanwang Chamber of Commerce were only ruthless, but their little heir's moves were not only ruthless, but also very wretched. Feng Zhiyao could not bear to look at him directly. "You're just an 11 or 12-year-old kid, yet you're using moves like monkey steals peach. Are you really a man?" Mo Xiuyao was not offended at all. "It's fine as long as he can beat him." When his martial arts are high enough, he'll naturally correct himself. Who like to use these wretched moves? Wouldn't this make his abilities even worse? When his martial arts were high enough to kill everyone, with Mo Xiaobao's arrogant personality, he would naturally choose to use more honorable moves. Feng Zhiyao shook his head and sighed. If the Su family knew, they would definitely be heartbroken. Half of Mo Xiaobao's education was the responsibility of the Su family. Even if they could not produce a young master like young Master Qingchen, they should at least produce a cultured and refined gentleman, right? Chapter 1101. Mo Xiaoyao scoffed, "It's better to raise a child like a wolf than a sheep. I don't have the mood to follow behind him and clean up his mess." What Mo Xiaobao had to do in the future wasn't as simple as just defending the city. If he was too naive and came to bother him all day long, he would only want to beat him to death. Although Mo Xiaobao tried his best, the difference in strength was too big. Finally, he was beaten to the point where he couldn't withstand Mo Jingli's attacks. Mo Xiaobao didn't care about his face and abandoned Mo Jingli without hesitation to run around the courtyard. At the start, Mo Jingli was still wary that Mo Xiaoyao and the others would suddenly make a move. But when he found out that Mo Xiaoyao had no intention of interfering, and that as long as he didn't try to escape from the Mahist army, the Shadow Guard would ignore him, Mo Jingli vented all his anger on Mo Xiaobao. Mo Xiaobao was chased all over the place. As he ran, he didn't forget to howl, "Mr. Shin, is your medicine expired? Ah, 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 ah." Shin Yang, who was sleeping soundly in his own courtyard, turned in his sleep and muttered, "Little brat, when has this godly doctor's medicine ever expired?" While Mo Xiaobao was using Qinggong to run around. Just as he was thinking about whether he should put down his face and ask his father for help, he suddenly felt Mo Jingli's speed of chasing him suddenly slow down. Amidst the chaos, Mo Xiaobao turned back to look. Although he couldn't see Mo Jingli's face clearly because of the dark sky, he could clearly see that Mo Jingli's clothes were soaked in sweat. If Mo Xiaobao who was being chased didn't sweat, but the person chasing him was already drenched in sweat. This was clearly not logical. Mo Xiaobao's eyes turned and he took out something from his chest and grabbed it towards Mo Jingli. "Here's the antidote." Then with the fastest speed, he pounced towards Mo Xiaoyao, who was watching the show from the side. After chasing Mo Xiaobao for a few laps, Mo Jingli clearly began to feel that something was wrong. A strange heat gradually surged up, and slowly began to affect his body. At this moment, he truly believed that Qin Lai hadn't lied to him. He really had been poisoned. So when Xiaobao shouted for the antidote, he paused for a moment and reached out to catch the thing that Xiaobao threw at him. By the time he realized that it was just a jade pendant that Mo Xiaobao had casually thrown over, Mo Xiaobao had already pounced into Mo Xiaoyao's arms. However, Mo Jingli did not have the time to care about Xiaobao's despicable actions because the strange poison had begun to take effect. At this time, it had been 4 hours since he drank. He didn't feel it at all before, but now, it was like a wildfire that became a prairie fire in a moment. For a moment, Mo Jingli was sweating profusely, as if he had been soaked in water. Mo Jingli fell to the ground, as if his body was being burned by a raging fire, and also as if there was a strange impulse and desire. These strange pains were stuck together, making him feel as if he was being bitten by insects. This sudden turn of events caused everyone to stare with their mouths agape. Their gazes towards Mo Xiaobao became strange. "This air, what kind of poison did you give him?" Feng Zhiyao asked with a frown. Looking at Mo Jingli's appearance, it didn't seem like he was in pain, or was it that his entire body didn't hurt? And what kind of poison was it that made him sweat without vomiting blood or bleeding from all orifices, and even had a ruddy complexion that didn't look like he was poisoned? Standing on the other side, Han Mingxi looked at Mo Jingli with pity, then looked at Imo Xiaobao who was lying in Imo Xiuyao's arms, and rubbed his nose. He decided to keep quiet. Imo Xiuyao glanced at Imo Xiaobao, patted Yi Li's hand and said, "Li, go back and rest first. There's nothing else to do here." Yi Li slightly frowned, looking at Imo Xiaobao who was lying in Imo Xiuyao's arms and looking at her with a pure smile. She sighed and nodded, "I'll go back first. You guys. That's enough, don't play anymore." Imo Xiaobao nodded and waved at Yi Li. Good night, mother." Seeing Yi Li leave with the others, Imo Xiuyao snorted and threw Imo Xiaobao out. Imo Xiaobao nimbly turned around in the air and landed firmly on the ground. "Lord Father, you're so cruel." His big black eyes looked at Imo Xiuyao, tears welling up in his eyes. Imo Xiuyao couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Who taught Imo Xiaobao to be so shameless? Imo Xiaobao pouted his little mouth and snorted. Facing a cruel father like Lord Father who treats his son like grass, what's the use of being shameless? This prince is using gentleness to conquer strength. On the side, Feng Zhiyao coughed and said, "I say, Prince, that. Shouldn't we deal with it?" Pointing at a certain person who was crying out in pain on the ground, Feng Zhiyao asked. Imo Xiuyao raised his eyebrows. "Did I poison him?" "Prince?" Feng Zhiyao looked at Imo Xiaobao. But he found that Imo Xiaobao was trying to pull Qin Lai away from the scene. Being stopped by someone, Imo Xiaobao turned around and glared at Feng Zhiyao with hidden bitterness. Feng Zhiyao also didn't understand how he had offended this little ancestor. He could only rub his nose and smile. "Prince, what kind of poison did you give him? We still have to interrogate him, you making him like this. It's not convenient for us to do anything." Looking at Imo Jingli's current appearance, even if they gave him a fierce beating, he wouldn't feel anything. Imo Xiaobao opened his mouth and looked pitifully at Qin Lai. Qin Lai looked up at the sky. The moon was really round tonight. Imo Xiaobao stomped his feet and ran to Feng Zhiyao's side to discuss with him in a low voice. "Don't tell my mother." Feng Zhiyao hesitated, but still nodded. Imo Xiaobao then leaned over to Feng Zhiyao's ear and whispered a few words. Feng Zhiyao was stunned and looked at Imo Xiaobao in disbelief. "I remember the princess consort said." Imo Xiaobao glared at him angrily. "That's why I said, you're not allowed to tell, mother." Saying this, he didn't forget to give Feng Zhiyao a threatening glare, then turned around and ran with Qin Lai. From afar, Qin Lai's puzzled voice came. "Didn't you say you wanted to watch a show?" Imo Xiaobao's voice was clearly flustered. "Do you think that looks good?" It doesn't look very good." He saw Imo Jingli writhing on the ground and moaning in pain. It would be better to torture him and make him look more interesting. Looking at the two children running away, Feng Zhiyao's expression twisted. Han Mingxi already had a conclusion in his heart and didn't care. He smiled and patted Feng Zhiyao, asking, "What did the little prince say?" Feng Zhiyao weakly waved his hand and said, "Which one of you? Take him to the brothel." A place like the Prince Ding mansion, they definitely couldn't let brothel girls in. The fucking prince was only 11 years old. 11 years old, and he had already drugged Imo Jingli twice in a row. How could this be? He bitterly looked at Imo Xiuyao at the side. "Prince, this subordinate feels that you and princess should strengthen the education of the prince." The corner of Imo Xiuyao's mouth twitched, nodding in a rare moment of silence. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Brothel, you should go ask Shenyang if he has the antidote." What was called the pupil surpassing the master, Imo Xiaobao's current actions were the pupil surpassing the master. Imo Xiuyao asked himself if he had ever come across such a genius and such a vicious idea in his life. Imo Xiuyao, who wanted to teach his son to do bad things, deeply felt that he was too naive. Chapter 1102. Are we going to call Shenyang now? We'll be killed. Feng Zhiyao shook his head. Han Mingxi coughed lightly and said, I remember. Mr. Shen said before, that medicine isn't poison. We can't make an antidote for now. Mo Xiaoyao rubbed his nose and waved his hand, saying, do as you see fit. I'll leave first. Prince Ding left without hesitation, leaving the mess for his subordinates to clean up. Mo Jingli, who was lying on the ground, was in so much pain that he wished he could die sooner. Even though there was no part of his body that wasn't in pain, as if his entire body was about to explode, he still heard every single word that Feng Zhiyao and the others had said. Don't kill me. Kill me. Mo Jingli finally understood what the greatest pain in life was. He even wished that he had never entered the Prince Ding mansion, that this was just a terrifying nightmare. Or that he would have been killed by Mo Xiaoyao in the Prince Ding mansion's main hall. A man who had long lost the right to be a man, but had been drugged with an aphrodisiac. Even if he had lost some of his abilities, it didn't mean that Mo Jingli had lost some of his senses. Because of this, the pain he was suffering was twice as much as a normal person. What made him even more fearful was that if other people knew, even though his entire body was covered in sweat, Mo Jingli couldn't help but shiver. Mo Xiaoyao. If you have the ability, then kill me. Do it. At this point, Mo Jingli couldn't hide anything anymore. His voice became sharp and piercing, making people who heard it frown. Many of the people present had entered the palace before, so how could they not hear the strangeness of this voice? This was clearly the sharp voice of the eunuchs who served in the palace. Mo Jingli was originally a very manly and handsome man, but after the end of the year, his voice became even deeper and deeper. Compared to the sudden sharpness and strangeness, it was even more hair-raising. What? What's going on? Feng Zhiyao asked in horror. Mo Xiaoyao's character was actually quite good. At the very least, he had never told anyone about the cruel things he had done to Mo Jingli. Of course, Mo Jingli himself wouldn't tell anyone about it either. Thus, when Mo Jingli suddenly let out such a strange sound, everyone's gaze fell on a certain part of Mo Jingli's body. Lei Tingfeng coughed lightly and said in a low voice, ever since Prince Li's late wife gave birth to a prince, it seems that he has never. Thus, this person suspected that Mo Jingli had already done that more than 10 years ago. Feng Zhiyao and the other people of the Prince Ding mansion rubbed their chins thoughtfully. According to what they knew, Prince Li had cheated many things out of Prince Li for the antidote. Could it be that after the prince had cheated him, he had made a fake antidote that not only made him unable to have children, he couldn't even be a man? Mo Xiaoyao, who was misunderstood, coughed lightly and waved his hand. Feng San, I'll leave this matter to you. After saying that, he didn't care about everyone's strange expressions and left with His Highness Prince Ding. Lei Tingfeng and Yelu Hong, who only noticed later, looked pitifully at Mo Jingli on the ground and said with an awkward smile, we should go back. They're probably still drinking in the hole. Northern Tribe's Crown Prince, let's go back and have a drink. Yelu Hong nodded and left with Lei Tingfeng. He left this hot potato to the people of the Prince Ding mansion. They only needed to know that Mo Jingli wouldn't be able to make a comeback in the future. Feng Zhiyao wanted to cry but had no tears. Capturing a captive was no problem, but capturing a captive who couldn't be cured by a strong aphrodisiac, what should he do? Han Mingxi rubbed his nose and said with a smile, just bear with it and it'll be over. When he said this, Han Mingxi also felt a little guilty. Normally, people would be able to bear with it and it would be over, but no one knew whether or not it would be over. The little heir was really too cruel. No one would believe that he didn't know what Mo Jingli was doing. Who would purposely drug someone with aphrodisiac for no reason? In the bedroom of the main courtyard, Yili washed up and removed the accessories and makeup on her body. She leisurely sat on the soft couch and slowly flipped through a book. Even though it was already past the fourth watch period, after a busy day, she suddenly relaxed and didn't feel sleepy. Yili sat on the soft couch beside the bed and read while waiting for Mo Xiuyao to return. Wang Fei, it's already so late. You should drink some soup and rest early. Qing Shuang came over with a bowl of chicken soup and said with a light smile. Yili smiled and nodded. She took the chicken soup and tasted it. She smiled and said, the taste is really good. Qing Shuang's hands are the best. I'm a little reluctant for you to get married. Qing Shuang's face was slightly red and she said coquettishly, Wang Fei is joking with Nubi again. Yili sighed and said, I'm not joking. You've been by my side the longest. This time, after this matter is over, the prince and I will personally host the wedding for you and Jean. Qing Shuang's eyes were slightly red and she said, there is no one in the world who treats Qing Shuang better than Wang Fei. Yili smiled helplessly and said, you girl, why are you crying? Go and see if the prince has returned. Just leave these trivial matters to the subordinates. Qing Shuang hesitated for a moment but still nodded and said, yes, this servant will take her leave. After a while, Qing Shuang came in and said with a smile, Wang Fei, the prince has gone to the study. On the soft couch, Yili had fallen asleep with a scroll in her hand. There was still half a bowl of chicken soup beside her and it was slightly cold. Wang Fei. Qing Shuang walked forward slowly and looked at the beautiful sleeping face in front of her. A complicated look flashed in her eyes. Wang Fei, are you asleep? Yili was sleeping peacefully and didn't seem to be affected at all. Qing Shuang bit her lips and whispered, Wang Fei, I'm sorry. Standing up, Qing Shuang raised her hand and pointed at the sleeping Yili. Just by looking at the skillful finger technique and strength, one could tell that her internal strength wasn't weak. She might even be stronger than Qing Wan, who used to be by Yili's side. A slender hand blocked her finger. Yili, who was in deep sleep, slowly opened her eyes. She sighed helplessly and said, Qing Shuang, you've really disappointed me. Wang Fei. Qing Shuang's face changed and she quickly squeezed out a smile. Wang Fei, what are you talking about? Qing Shuang doesn't understand. Yili shook her head and smiled, how can you not understand? Agarwood is indeed the most difficult drug to detect, but you shouldn't put mushrooms in the chicken soup. Didn't you smell something wrong with the mushrooms? Mr. Chen said that agarwood is incompatible with many things, such as orchids and mushrooms. Qing Shuang also knew that since she was discovered, she couldn't hide it from Yili. She said in a low voice, Wang Fei, I'm sorry. Pulling out the hand that was held by Yili, Qing Shuang raised her hand and chopped towards Yili. Yili didn't show any weakness. With one hand on the soft couch, she jumped up and kicked out. Qing Shuang had been by Yili's side for more than 10 years. Naturally, she knew Yili's strength better than anyone else. She didn't dare to be negligent and pulled out a soft sword to stab at Yili. Yili's eyes darkened and the short blade in her sleeve flew out. A silver light flashed and shot towards Qing Shuang. Anyone who wanted to harm the prince and Wang Fei was wrong. Yili helped Uncle Mo to sit down by the side, before turning back to look at Qing Shuang, asking mildly, Qing Shuang, why? Qing Shuang raised her head to look at Yili, smiling helplessly and bitterly as she said, didn't Wang Fei already know? Yili looked at Qing Shuang carefully. She still remembered that when she had brought Qing Shuang back to the manor, she had still been an innocent and cute child of not even 10 years of age. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years had already passed. At some unknown time, this girl whose eyes were filled with helplessness could no longer be seen. You are someone of infinite boundless mountain? Yili asked. Qing Shuang nodded. Yili said, Infinite Boundless Mountain has long ceased to exist. I know that you have not betrayed any information about the Prince Ding mansion all these years. Otherwise, you would have already been exposed long ago. Back then, when Infinite Boundless Mountain was destroyed, why didn't you tell me? Could it be that you think that after saying such things, I would kill you? Qing Shuang shook her head, looking at Yili as she said, I know that Wang Fei has been very good to me. It is I who have let Wang Fei down. Now that things have come to this, Qing Shuang only wishes for death. Yili closed her eyes, a trace of anger appearing on her elegant and gentle face. Only wishes for death. What a good only wishes for death. In your eyes, is life so cheap? Not saying anything, not caring about anything, you only wish for death. Or is it that, because the Prince Ding mansion destroyed Infinite Boundless Mountain, you harbor resentment in your heart? If that is the case, this consort will grant you your wish. Qing Shuang, tell me, is your heart with Infinite Boundless Mountain? Qing Shuang lowered her head, not speaking. Yili shook her head, sighing, you are not. You have been by my side since you were 8 or 9 years old, and then followed me into the Prince Ding mansion. If you really have feelings for Infinite Boundless Mountain, you should have long since gathered quite a bit of information by my side, and could have revealed it to the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain. You even have the greatest chance of getting close to Little Treasure, Lin, and Exayan. Yet, you have never done anything. Qing Shuang, tell me why exactly this is. Qing Shuang stared blankly at Yili, only lowering her head after a long time. Sparkling tears slid down from the corners of her eyes, dropping drop by drop onto the floor in front of her. Wang Fei, woo-woo. Looking at Yili, Qing Shuang's tears fell in large droplets. Yili looked at her calmly, her expression gentle, as she said softly, tell me, what exactly is going on? Do you have something that Imo Jingli can use against you? Qing Shuang nodded, saying, my family. I still have a younger brother. He is in the hands of the Li King, and if I don't do as he says, my younger brother will die. Your younger brother? Yili frowned, you are not an orphan. When Yili had met Qing Shuang that year, she had only been an orphan girl who was about to starve to death on the streets. Afterwards, Qing Shuang had also said that her parents had drowned during the flood. Yili shook her head. Since Qing Shuang was someone of Infinite Boundless Mountain, all of this was naturally fake. Qing Shuang shook her head, saying softly, my parents died when I was young, and I grew up in Infinite Boundless Mountain with my younger brother. The year I met Wang Fei, there happened to be a flood. Infinite Boundless Mountain then sent a group of people to infiltrate the Chu capital, waiting for an opportunity to infiltrate the mansions of the noble families there. I pretended to be an orphan, and was just saved by Wang Fei. Yili raised her brows, saying, so, you originally did not want to enter the Yi Manor? Qing Shuang bit her lips and said, for spies like us, many of us will not receive any missions in the end. We can live our lives peacefully like ordinary people. At that time, Wang Fei bought me back. I knew that Wang Fei was the fiancé of the Li King, and following her into the Yi Manor could not be considered wrong. Afterwards, Wang Fei's engagement was annulled by the Li King, but I did not expect that she would marry into the Prince Ding mansion. This servant only wanted to live out her days peacefully, so I persuaded the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain that if this servant revealed any information about the Prince Ding mansion, it would definitely arouse the suspicions of the prince and Wang Fei. Rather than revealing some insignificant information, it would be better to keep it for the most important time. In the following few years, Infinite Boundless Mountain did not ask this servant for any more information. Also, the Prince Ding mansion is heavily guarded, and this servant does not know any truly important information. I know, not long after Madame Dongfang passed away, the Li King sent someone to find this servant. Previously, this servant had always been perfunctory with him. This time, he personally came to Glass City, and even brought this servant's younger brother's keepsake. Qing Shuang recounted her story intermittently, and everyone present couldn't help but sigh when they heard it. A girl who had been raised by infinite boundless mountain from a young age, and a younger brother who had been taken hostage, Qing Shuang also had her own difficulties. Mo Xiuyao reached out to hold Yi Li's hand and said softly, "Li, why do you want to keep her?" Mo Xiuyao never showed mercy to those who betrayed Li and tried to kidnap Li. If not for the fact that Yi Li was so determined to keep Qing Shuang, Mo Xiuyao would have long since struck her with a palm. Yi Li sighed. "She has been with me for more than 10 years after all. Fortunately, she didn't make a huge mistake. Let's wait and see." Mo Xiuyao frowned. "I don't care what you think. Even if she was forced, such a person definitely can't stay by your side." "I know. I don't think that way either." Looking at Mo Xiuyao's solemn appearance, Yi Li smiled, saying mildly, "Even though she had spared Qing Shuang's life on account of their more than 10 years of friendship, how could she keep her by her side? Some things, once they had happened, they could never be erased. No matter who it was, it would always leave a trace in their heart." Looking at Yi Li's still somewhat dejected expression, Su Qingbai smiled mildly. "Li, don't think too much. These past 10 years, that girl also didn't leak any information about you and the Prince Ding mansion to Infinite Boundless Mountain. Thinking about it, these 10 years of interaction weren't wasted. People were all selfish. Their own blood relatives were always the most important. Even the Su family, known as the head of the world's pure-blooded families, would still choose their own kin over those unrelated to them. It was just that Qing Shuang's method of solving the problem was wrong. This also meant that these 10 years of feelings were destined to turn into bubbles." Knowing that her fourth brother was comforting her, Yi Li smiled mildly. "Fourth brother doesn't need to worry. I'm fine. Your subordinate Feng Zhiyao requests an audience with Princess." Outside, Feng Zhiyao hurriedly requested an audience. "Come in." Yi Li saw Feng Zhiyao walk in with a strange expression on his face, and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" Mo Jingli sighed. Young Master Feng San's handsome face was slightly distorted. Mo Jingli is dead. Dead? Yi Li was a little surprised. How did he die? Mo Jingli didn't seem to be a resolute and unyielding person, someone who would rather die than be humiliated. Also, when Mo Xiuyao had returned, he had only said that he had captured Mo Jingli. How did he die in such a short time? Feng Zhiyao scratched his head in frustration, squeezing out a smile. In any case, Mo Jingli is already dead. That, your subordinate actually wanted to ask how we should deal with his corpse. Yi Li glanced at Mo Xiuyao, asking, "Should we return the corpse to the Dechu state?" In a few days, the Dechu state would send an emissary to negotiate with the Prince Ding mansion, and bring the young Emperor Mo Suiyun back. Feng Zhiyao hurriedly shook his head and said, "Wang Fei, by the time the people from the Dechu state arrive, Mo Jingli's corpse would already be. Why don't we return his ashes to them?" Even though he was very doubtful whether the people from the Dechu state really wanted Mo Jingli's corpse, Feng Zhiyao still didn't want it. Yi Li frowned. Even though she felt that Feng Zhiyao's attitude was a little strange, but what Feng Zhiyao said wasn't without an end. Seeing that Mo Xiuyao didn't object, she nodded in agreement. Feng Zhiyao finally let out a sigh of relief, and glanced at Mo Xiuyao with a strange expression. Mo Xiuyao looked up and smiled faintly at him. Feng Zhiyao only felt the cold wind whistling above his head, and hurriedly shrunk his neck back. Yi Li wasn't in a good mood, and after sitting for a while, she returned to her room to rest. The others still had to stay behind to deal with the remaining matters. Fortunately, after today, the Prince Ding mansion could truly live peacefully for a long period of time, so everyone present was very energetic and didn't feel tired. Mo Xiaoyao sat on the main seat and discussed with Su Qingbai the arrangements for the envoys from the various countries. After these 2 days, these envoys from the western regions would prepare to depart for their respective countries. Sending off the envoys wasn't a small matter, and tonight's banquet inevitably made people feel that they couldn't enjoy themselves to the fullest, so the farewell banquet had to be held even more grandly. Feng Zhiyao sat to the side, as if he had received an unknown shock. Sometimes he glanced at Mo Xiaoyao, sometimes he glanced at Mo Xiaobao. His eyes were so strange that even Su Qingbai couldn't help but look at him. After Mo Xiaoyao and Su Qingbai finished speaking, Mo Xiaoyao looked at Feng Zhiyao with a raised eyebrow and said, "If you have something to say it quickly." Feng Zhiyao shook his head and said firmly, "I have nothing to say." Chapter 1105. Mo Xiaoyao snorted, not believing him at all. "What did Mo Jingli say to you before he died?" Feng Zhiyao shook his head, saying in a small voice, "He didn't say anything. I just guessed." "What did you guess?" "I didn't guess anything, but I can see how much you hate Mo Jingli." Feng Zhiyao spoke without thinking. Prince Ding's methods of torturing people had unknowingly improved. No one knew when he turned Mo Jingli into a eunuch. Turning him into a eunuch was one thing, but he even ordered his son to drug him with an aphrodisiac. Drugging a eunuch with such a drug, it was simply infuriating. Thinking of Mo Jingli's miserable state before he died, Feng Zhiyao had reason to believe that Mo Jingli had a 90% chance of being stifled by his unquenchable desire, and another 10% chance of being angered to death by the father and son pair, Mo Xiaoyao and Mo Xiaobao. The pitiful ruler of a generation, in the end, he died in such a miserable state. What was worse was that he wasn't the only one who knew of his situation. If Mo Jingli was in heaven, he would probably be angered to death. Looking at Feng Zhiyao's eyes, Mo Xiaoyao knew that he had misunderstood. But he really couldn't explain to others that he didn't order Mo Xiaobao to drug Mo Jingli. Although he had hinted in this regard, he never thought that Mo Xiaobao would be even more efficient than him. Even if he explained, no one would believe him, right? Mo Xiaoyao thought with some regret. Mo Xiaobao. Looking at Mo Xiaobao, who was trying to slip away by the door, Mo Xiaoyao's lips curved into a happy smile. Mo Xiaobao quickly straightened his body. "Father, this child is tired and wants to go back to rest." Mo Xiaoyao nodded. "Go, be good. Your confinement begins tomorrow. When your third uncle and fourth uncle get married, father will ask your mother to grant you a small amount of parole." As he spoke, Mo Xiaoyao gave his son a "look at how well father treats you" expression. "Imperial father." Mo Xiaoyao exploded. "How can you be like this?" Mo Xiaoyao grinned at him. "Imperial father, what did I do?" Mo Xiaobao was furious. "You clearly said that if I won, the confinement would be waived. I didn't use the shadow guard and Qi Lin from the Prince Ding mansion. I won. Mo Xiaobao stomped his feet. Mo Xiaoyao rubbed his forehead and looked at him with a half-smile. "Useless. Isn't he a shadow guard? He's my friend." He was no longer a shadow guard. He had not joined Qi Lin yet. He's a free man. Mo Xiaobao argued. Mo Xiaoyao raised his brows. "Is it like this?" Mo Xiaobao raised his chin and said, "Of course it's like this. If you don't believe me, you can ask Mo Hua. Qin Lai isn't a shadow guard." Luckily this prince was smart and removed Qin Lai's name from the shadow guard first. Mo Xiaobao rejoiced in his heart. Since he dared to make a bet with father, how could he lose over such a small matter? Mo Xiaoyao's smile was still amiable. "Oh. Since it's like this. Then Shenyang isn't a shadow guard. Shenyang's medicine naturally doesn't belong to the shadow guard. It can't be considered breaking the rules. Son, don't you think? Right? Gotcha. The lively Mo Xiaobao suddenly froze. Mother. Mother said that if he used medicine that shouldn't be used again, she would harshly punish him. If Mother knew that he stole Shenyang's fragrant something pill, not only would he be exempted from 3 months of confinement, it was possible that he would be locked up for another 3 months. Imperial father is a bastard. Woo-woo. Mo Xiaobao silently cried in his heart. Mo Xiaoyao didn't feel the sadness in his son's heart at all. The smile on his face was like a spring breeze. The wind was cold. Son, did father say something wrong? Mo Xiaoyao gently asked. Mo Xiaobao gritted his teeth. No, no. Father is right, Qin Lai is a shadow guard. Despicable. Bastard. Framing me. Mo Xiaobao stared with all his strength. Idiot. Idiot. You're still too inexperienced. Mo Xiaoyao leisurely drank his tea. Then this time father won. Mo Xiaoyao asked with a smile. Father is right. Mo Xiaobao gritted his teeth. Mo Xiaoyao lovingly rubbed his son's little head and said, Son, doing bad things isn't a problem, but if you're caught by the adults, then it won't be good. In the future. Keep up the good work. Mo Xiaobao bit his cheeks. Father, didn't you get caught by grandfather and uncle when you were young? Mo Xiaoyao lightly sighed. Father never did bad things when he was young. Mo Xiaobao directly rolled his eyes at him and angrily turned to leave. If I believed you, then I'm a fool. Seeing his son's figure rushing out like the wind, Mo Xiaoyao shook his head with a smile and sighed. I really didn't lie to you. Ever since I was young, people have always praised me for being smart and sensible. Feng Zhiyao, who was watching the father and son fight on the side, was speechless. That's right, ever since you were young, everyone has praised you. That's because your son is openly insulting you, while you're insulting him in the dark. So even now, other than this young master, no one knows that Mo Jingli was messed with by you. Poor Mo Jingli, this young master will definitely go burn incense for you later. You can rest in peace. At least. In the world after death, there wouldn't be a creature like Mo Xiaoyao. After the Prince Ding Mansion's first birthday banquet, Glass City was still bustling with noise and excitement. Everything that happened on the night of the banquet was firmly locked in the Prince Ding Mansion. All the common people happily spent a day that wasn't a holiday, but was more festive than a holiday. Although some people found that their neighbors or good friends were missing the next day, after a long time, they just left it as it was. The ones that truly changed their attitude were the envoys from the various countries that came to congratulate them. Although the Prince Ding Mansion wasn't publicly announced, almost everyone knew that the Chu State's deposed emperor, Mo Jingli, was already dead. And his death was quite dishonorable. When the nobles heard this news, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. That kind of death was really everyone's nightmare. And the Prince Ding Mansion was able to silently kill an emperor in a short night, even if that emperor was a deposed one. And it was said that Prince Ding and Princess Consort didn't do anything. Everything was done by the 11-year-old little Shitzi. How could people not be respectful and fearful? Because there was an accident at the first birthday banquet of the two children, the host and guests could not enjoy themselves. Ding Wang and Ding Wang Fei invited all the guests to attend the wedding banquet of the Su family's third young master and fourth young master in 10 days. Although the third and fourth young masters of the Su family weren't as powerful and famous as the eldest young master, they were still the direct descendants of the Su family and were Princess Ding's cousin. The fourth young master of the Su family was a powerful official of the border. Especially when he came with the envoys from the western regions, they could be considered close friends. Therefore, all the envoys agreed to attend the Su family's wedding before leaving. The two madams of the Su family were in a hurry to get married. The two young masters of the Su family also wanted to get the beauties. One of the two brides was the former princess of Dechu State, and the other was the granddaughter of Duke Hua who had sacrificed herself for the country. She was Princess Ding's close friend. This return gift was naturally unprecedentedly grand. Chapter 1106. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the wedding. The guest courtyard of the Prince Ding mansion was bustling with people coming and going early in the morning. In the spacious room, two beautiful brides in bright red wedding dresses sat side by side. Yili led a group of madams and maidens to dress the two brides. Whether it was Hua Tianxiang or Mo Wuyo, both could be called first-rate beauties in terms of appearance. Hua Tianxiang was bright and moving. Although she was over 20 years old, her appearance still hadn't changed. With a light touch of makeup, she looked even more magnificent and eye-catching. Mo Wuyo looked somewhat similar to Hua Tianxiang, but she had more of a gentle and quiet temperament than when she was young. Perhaps it was because she had studied medicine for a long time, and her experience of helping the world and patients made her look more approachable and kind. Princess Ding, your makeup looks so good. Princess Helan, wearing a fiery red dress, walked around the room curiously. She was from the north, and it was her first time seeing a real wedding in the Central Plains. Seeing the two brides wearing wedding dresses embroidered with dragons and phoenixes and mandarin ducks playing in the water, and putting on light makeup, Princess Helan couldn't help but feel a little envious. Yili looked at Princess Helan with a smile and said, "If the princess likes it, why don't you find someone in the Central Plains to marry? At that time, this consort will personally do your makeup for you." This was naturally a joke. Yili also knew that Princess Helan wouldn't mind such a joke. Princess Helan pretended to think for a while, then shook her head regretfully and said, "Unfortunately, this princess still likes the men of the north. In the future, when this princess gets married, I invite Princess Ding to attend. At that time, I will ask Princess Ding to do my makeup for me." Everyone couldn't help but laugh in unison. They had a better impression of this generous and candid princess. Empress Hua carefully inserted the golden hairpin into Hua Tianxiang's hair and looked carefully. She smiled and said, "Very beautiful, very beautiful. The princess is right, the princess consort's makeup is really beautiful." Looking at her beautiful niece, Empress Hua's eyes couldn't help but redden. She was such an outstanding child, yet she only got married at this age. Her best years were locked away in her boudoir. "Auntie." Hua Tianxiang held Empress Hua's hand and smiled faintly. "Auntie, am I really that beautiful?" Empress Hua smiled and said, "My Tianxiang is the most beautiful bride." "Mother, where's my daughter?" "You've forgotten about your daughter." Seeing his mother's sadness, Mo Wuyu hurriedly spoke up to interrupt his mother's melancholy and acted like a spoiled child. Empress Hua smiled as she pinched her daughter's little face and said, "My Wuyo is also the most beautiful bride. Be good and don't move. Mother will help you comb your hair." Mo Wuyu did not move and allowed his mother to do his hair. Looking at his mother's focused expression in the bronze mirror, he also revealed a sweet smile. "It's time to eat. Bride, it's time to eat." Yungu and Murongting came over with a few side dishes and snacks and said with a smile, "Come and eat something. Once it's done, there will be nothing to eat. You'll be hungry for the whole day." This was Murongting's experience. When Murongting got married, she carried a big apple with her. In the end, she was out of breath from hunger after the wedding. Hua Tianxiang turned around and said with a smile, "Murongting, Yungu, thank you." Murongting waved her hand indifferently. Yungu pursed her lips and said with a smile, "No need to thank me. Aunt Sue secretly told me yesterday to prepare some food for you, otherwise you'll be hungry. It's so pitiful that you can't eat after getting married, but Sister Hua and Wuyo are both so beautiful." Yili stood up with a smile and helped them arrange the things. She said with a smile, "Does Yungu like Sister Hua and Wuyo like this?" Yungu blinked her eyes and nodded, "I like it. I haven't worn such beautiful clothes before." Murong Ting covered her mouth and said with a smile, "That's easy. Yungu can also get married and wear such a wedding dress." Ah. Yungu blinked and was a little confused. "But, who is Yungu going to marry?" Murong Ting smiled more mysteriously and asked quietly, "What do you think of young Master Qingchen?" "Qing. Young Master Qingchen." Yun Ji's face changed greatly and she shook her head repeatedly. "No, no." Everyone was at a loss. Young Master Qingchen was not so annoying, right? The little girl was so scared that her face changed. Yili patted Yun Ji's shoulder and asked softly, "Why not? Yungu doesn't like brother." Yungu glanced at Yili carefully. "Sisterly, can you not tell young Master Qingchen?" Yili nodded seriously, indicating that she would never spread the news casually. Yungu said with a drooping face, "Young Master Qingchen is so fierce. He makes me copy books every day. The day before yesterday, he made me copy the Book of Rites. I asked Sister Qingjing and Aunt Sue. Sister Qingjing clearly said that she had never copied those books before. But if I don't copy, young Master Qingchen will keep staring at me, as if I am very naughty and bad. I still have to learn medicine from my godfather. Last night, I wrote until midnight before I went to sleep." Listening to Yun Ji's soft complaints, everyone looked at each other. What did young Master Qingchen want to do? He scared the little girl like this. Seeing Yili and others' strange expressions, Yungu quickly comforted them, "Sisterly, don't worry. I am not afraid of young Master Qingchen." "Oh. Why?" Yili asked calmly. Yungu said with a happy face, "Godfather told me that after the third and fourth young master's wedding, he will go out to travel. He wants to take me with him. Then we can travel around and help the world. When I come back, I will become the world's most famous doctor." The most important thing was that she would not be forced to copy books by young Master Qingchen every day. Thinking of the unfinished books in her study, Yun Ji's small hands could not help but tremble a few times. Her small lips also pouted with some grievance. Young Master Qingchen was too bad. Sister Qingjing said that she had never copied so many books in her life. She only needed to read and remember. But young Master Qingchen actually said that she was too stupid and had to copy. She clearly already knew how to recite. Yungu hates young Master Qingchen so much. Hua Tianxiang sat on the left and asked curiously while eating. Yungu quickly shook her head and said, "Not really. If only young Master Qingchen was not so fierce. Young Master Qingchen gave me a lot of things and even brought me back to live in his house. He is the best to me just like my father and godfather." Cough cough. Hua Tianxiang and Murong Ting choked at the same time. Mo Wuyu, who was sitting in front of the dressing table, could not help but tilt his neck. Only Yili sat calmly and drank tea. What happened to Sister Tianxiang and Sister Ting'er? Yungu said with some worry. Cough cough, nothing. Hua Tianxiang said with a smile. Young Master Qingchen, rest in peace. When Hua Tianxiang and Mo Wuyu dressed up, it was almost time. Yili took Hua Tianxiang's hand and said with a smile, "I will call you cousin-in-law in the future. I wish you happiness." Chapter 1107. Hua Tianxiang blushed and nodded. Li He, thank you. Silly, what are you thanking me for? Yi Li smiled. As long as you are happy and third brother is happy, everything will be fine, right? Hua Tianxiang nodded. Yes, everything is in the past. We will all be better in the future. Reporting to Princess Consort, the bridal procession has arrived. The maid outside the door reported. Yi Li nodded and smiled. I know, come in. She stood up and took the dragon and phoenix veil and personally covered Hua Tianxiang's head. Empress Hua also took the veil and covered Wu You's head. The matron of honor and the maidservants who had been waiting outside hurriedly came in and carefully led the two brides out. Yi Li turned around and smiled. All right, let's get ready to go to the Su family and join in the fun. Quickly go back and change your clothes. Because of the relationship between the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family, the wedding was held together. After the brides left, all the guests would go to the Su family to attend the banquet. As a result, everyone was saved from a difficult situation. After all, although the girl who was marrying into the Prince Ding mansion was not Prince Ding's biological sister, she was still marrying from the Prince Ding mansion. No one dared to not go. As a result, wouldn't the Su family have no one to congratulate them? Now that they were being held together, it was convenient for everyone to be more lively. Late at night, the Su family mansion was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, bustling with noise and excitement. The master of ceremonies shouted, "Send them to the bridal chamber." The newlyweds, who had just bowed to heaven and earth, were escorted to the east. When the banquet began, the entire Su family mansion became more lively. The main hall was filled with singing and dancing, and the fragrance of wine permeated the air. Even the two masters of the Su family, who were usually dignified and elegant, couldn't help but drink a few more cups, and their elegant faces became more colorful. The two Madame Su led Qin Jing around the banquet table with smiles on their faces, taking very good care of her. The courtyard outside the main hall was also filled with banquet tables prepared for the guests who were not qualified to sit in the main hall. Although she was sitting outside, the light from the makeup made it seem like it was daytime. Although they couldn't enjoy the singing and dancing inside, the sky outside was filled with colorful fireworks. Furthermore, second young Master Su and fifth young Master Su from the Su family were there to accompany them personally. While the celebration was going on, two people were sitting on the roof of the Su family, leaning against each other. The man's long white hair glowed with a faint silver light under the moonlight. His long white hair and the woman's black hair intertwined with each other in the breeze. Yi Li sat beside Mo Xiaoyao and gently rested her head on his lap. Her eyes seemed to be enjoying the tranquility amidst the hustle and bustle. Mo Xiaoyao's eyes were as gentle as water. He raised his hand and gently touched her slightly red cheeks. He laughed in a low voice and said, "They are getting married. Why is Mr. Li so happy?" Yi Li opened her eyes. There was still a faint smile in her eyes. Just now, she had drunk a few more cups of wine. Her face was more rosy than usual, and her eyes were more smiling. Of course I am happy that third brother and fourth brother are getting married. However, isn't this what I am most happy about? Mo Xiaoyao intimately brushed away the hair by her cheek and asked, "What is it then?" Yi Li smiled and said, "We can finally live our lives happily, right?" Mo Xiaoyao smiled. He lowered his head and pressed his forehead against Yi Li's. He smiled and said, "Yes, we don't have to fight anymore. We don't have to fight in the open or in the dark. In this world, no one will dare to bother us anymore. From now on, we can live whatever life Mr. Li wants." Yi Li nodded and said, "It's good that we don't have to fight anymore. The commoners are very pitiful. Now that the world is at peace, we don't have to do anything. I won't feel guilty. No matter what the world becomes, Mr. Li doesn't need to feel guilty," Mo Xiaoyao said gently. there is no woman in the world who can do better than Mr. Li. Yili smiled and said, if the world is still in chaos, and I still insist that you give up everything to accompany me, then I will feel guilty. Yes, that would be unreasonable. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said softly with a smile, Mr. Li can be unreasonable. No matter what Mr. Li wants, it is always right. Is Mr. Li drunk? Yili leaned against Mo Xiaoyao's chest and shook her head. She closed her eyes sleepily and said, the way things are now is very good. It will be even better in the future. Mo Xiaoyao gently pulled her into his arms and said, what is very good? Yili said, the way things are now is very good. In the future, the rivers are clear and the seas are clear. The four seas are peaceful. When we go out to play, we will see the common people living and working in peace and contentment. Mo Xiaoyao smiled and said, I know Mr. Li doesn't like to fight. I remember Mr. Li's poem, pitiful white bones piled up in a lonely grave, all for the general's military exploits. I'm not talking about you. I don't know, the rivers are clear and the seas are peaceful. Let's leave this goal to Mr. Mo. Mr. Li, what do you think? Mo Xiaoyao lowered his head and smiled. A soft kiss fell on her blushing face. Bam bam. In the distance, several huge fireworks bloomed in the sky, blooming with beautiful light and flowers. Yili opened her eyes at some point. The man's expression was reflected in her gentle eyes. Xiaoyao, I love you. Looking at the man's handsome face, gentle eyes, and snow-white hair, Yili suddenly opened her mouth. It wasn't hard to say love. What was hard was to hold hands and live and die together. Even after the world was in their hands, they still loved each other deeply. Mo Xiaoyao was slightly stunned. His handsome eyes flashed with joy and satisfaction. Mr. Li. Mr. Li, for all eternity. I will only love you. He lowered his head and gently covered her dark red lips. Yili raised her hand and held his shoulder. For all eternity. I will love you. If it weren't for me, you would have already ascended the throne and created a new era of peace and prosperity. Mo Xiaoyao insisted on not ascending the throne. Yili understood that most of it was for her sake. Because he knew she didn't want to be in the palace, and because he promised to give her the one and only in this life. Mo Xiaoyao laughed softly. Mr. Li, without you, where would the peace and prosperity of the Prince Ding mansion come? The dazzling fireworks in the night sky continued to bloom. The two sat side by side and snuggled up to each other, quietly enjoying the dazzling scenery. When Xiao Bao grows up, I will accompany Mr. Li to travel thousands of miles in mountains, free and unfettered. As long as our family is together, no matter when or where, I will feel free and unfettered. Meeting Mr. Li was the best thing that happened to Mo Xiaoyao in this life. In both my previous and current life, meeting you was also the happiest thing that happened to me. If I could meet you, so what if I had to suffer and experience life and death? If I could meet you, so what if I had to travel through time and experience the world? Bam! The red fireworks bloomed into a gorgeous peony in the air, transforming into a huge handwriting that read, May you be together for 100 years. Meeting you in this life, I only wish for 100 years of bliss and peace. 5 years later, Prince Ding passed on the throne of the Prince Ding mansion to crown Prince Mo Yuchen and left with the princess consort. From then on, they lived a carefree life and no longer cared about the world. Mo Yuchen succeeded the position of Prince Ding and once again refused the request of the ministers to ascend the throne. He worked hard to govern the country, and the power of the Prince Ding mansion became stronger and stronger. 13 years later, Prince Ding's brother Mo Yufeng, who was 14 years old, was appointed as the Grand Marshal of the Prince Ding mansion. He swept the West Hill and the West Hill bowed down. Mo Yuchen, the Prince Ding, personally led the northern tribes and retreated to the western ice field. The Mahist army arrived at the Yunnan River. Mo Yufeng personally persuaded the southern Chu to surrender. The Emperor Chu of the southern Chu saw the general trend and voluntarily submitted to the Prince Ding mansion. From then on, the world was peaceful. Mo Yuchen ascended the throne at the age of 30 and named the country Li. At the age of 30, Mo Yuchen ruled the world. From then on, the world was unified. One of the most powerful dynasties in the history books began. End of text. Although there were people who felt that this name was not good for the heir's tall and mighty image, but after seeing the little heir's delicate smile and cute expression, they couldn't help but agree that His Highness Prince Ding was too wise and far-sighted. It was to the point that many years later, Mo Xiaobao could not help but deeply regret his actions of using his cuteness to trick the heir. Mo Xiaobao looked at his teammates in despair. His teammates smiled in agreement, indicating that Qin Li's words were true. Originally, Qilin might have been more closed off than other armies, but Qilin's news was definitely not closed off. More importantly, a large portion of the current Qilin had just joined in the past 2 years, and many of them had personally witnessed the little heir's feats. Xiaobao is very good, it suits his image very well. Let's call him Xiaobao. The leader of the group was the first to make the decision. This might be the only chance in his life to mess with the heir, so he had to do it. Although this could very well be the reason why he was continuously enslaved by someone for the rest of his life. Therefore, under the situation of 7-1, Mo Xiaobao was forced to accept the name Xiaobao again with the absolute minority of votes. Because he was temporarily serving Qilin, Qilin's internal members jokingly called him Qilin Xiaobao, Qilin baby. The blow to his name almost made Mo Xiaobao unable to recover. He no longer had the ambition he had when he first joined Qilin. It wasn't that Mo Xiaobao didn't want to do something big, but whenever he thought of hearing countless people call him Xiaobao XX, Xiaobao XXXX, Xiaobao XXXX, he had the urge to hide in the wilderness for the rest of his life. Therefore, after reflecting on the painful experience, Mo Xiaobao finally confirmed that his life was Prince Ding. He wanted to be evil. Be open and aboveboard, be famous for thousands of miles, and be awe-inspiring in the world. He wanted to hide in the dark, be evil, and scheme against people. He wanted the martial arts world to not have his name, but there would definitely be legends about him. He wanted to use his own method to wash away this unglamorous nickname. The consecutive blows finally caused the soft and adorable Mo Xiaobao to turn completely black. Xiaobao. Mo Xiaobao, baby Qilin. Whoosh. An arrow pierced through the air and firmly nailed itself between the legs of a certain team commander who was sitting lazily on the ground. It was only 1 centimeter away from a certain sensitive part. A certain young heir with a gloomy expression slowly walked over and calmly pulled out the arrow. My apologies, Commander. The shot was off by a hand. I'll practice 20 more times. A certain commander quietly shrunk his legs and couldn't help but tremble as tears streamed down his face. Damn, you missed by just 1 centimeter. If you didn't miss, where did you want to shoot? Brother Xiaobao. Brother Xiaobao, Xian promised to marry me when she grows up. A certain adorable little softy happily rushed into the study. She was so pleased with herself that she even called him by his childhood name. The young man behind the desk coldly glanced at her and didn't say anything. Ha ha ha, Xian finally agreed to marry me. I'm going to tell my parents. I'm going to prepare the betrothal gift. Little Dumpling danced with joy. Give up. You can't afford to marry my sister even if you sell your whole family. The young man mercilessly attacked. No way. Princess Ding will definitely agree. Humph. Little Dumpling was still happy. Mo Xiaobao, it's wrong to be jealous of your future brother-in-law. Looking at little dumb Lang who ran away, the young man looked ferocious. Come on, tell Sujirue that I don't discriminate against close relatives. I believe that the excellence of the Su family can make up for this small defect. In addition, tell the little princess that it's embarrassing to take a fool out. The next day, the 13-year-old young master of the Lang family was heartbroken because Princess Aksayan, who was just 4 years old, said that she wanted to marry cousin Jirui more. Xiao Bao, can you do me a favor? Young Master Feng San pulled the young master of the Prince Ding mansion with a smile. He looked as if they were close and it would be embarrassing if he didn't help him. A dark light flashed in Imo Xiaobao's calm eyes. What's the matter? Young Master Feng San carefully took out a delicate box and handed it to him. Help me give this to, Why don't you give it to her yourself? Imo Xiaobao opened it and saw a delicate and beautiful phoenix hairpin inside. Young Master Feng San sighed helplessly. She doesn't want to see me. Your father said that I don't do anything important every day and I can't go out of the city this month. Xiaobao, do me a favor. Aren't you going out of the city to visit Mr. Qingyun today? This is for you. Young Master Feng San reluctantly took out a pair of bright pearls and gave it to Imo Xiaobao. After a long time, Imo Xiaobao finally nodded calmly and agreed. Seeing young Master Feng San turn around and leave happily, Imo Xiaobao turned back and threw the pearls to the guard behind him. Send this to Mrs. Yang. Thinking for a while, Imo Xiaobao said, forget it. I'll send it myself. Feng San is so careless. He doesn't even leave a letter. No wonder she doesn't like him. A month later, young Master Feng San went out of the city and asked to see someone. This time, he didn't even enter the city, let alone see the person. And young Master Feng San would never know why. Chapter 1109. Yunke grew up in the mountains with her father. Her mother passed away too early, so she did not have much of an impression of her mother. In her memory, there was only a grave full of grass and flowers. Her father often brought her to the grave to talk to her mother. Yunke thought that her life would continue like that until one day, her father passed away. Before her father passed away, he took care of everything. What Yunke did was to cry and bury her father next to her mother's grave. Then, she knew that no one in this world could accompany her forever. His father had even made plans for his future. So Yunke waited peacefully for the arrival of the person her father said would come to pick her up. But she did not expect that she would wait for 3 years. Although she did not wait for the person her father said would come to pick her up for 3 years, Yunke was not anxious. She had lived like this for more than 10 years. There was nothing wrong with continuing to live like this in the future. She knew how to hunt, pick herbs, plant herbs, and make all kinds of pills to trade for things she needed. But sometimes, Yunke began to like climbing up the high cliff to look at the smoke of the village below the mountain. Sometimes, there would be a strange feeling flowing in her heart. Yunke did not know that it was loneliness. Until one day, Yunke went up the mountain to pick herbs as usual. Then, she heard the faint sound of melodious music coming from the mountain. Yunke knew that it was the sound of a guqin. She also had a guqin. She used to see her father play it often. After her father passed away, no one played it anymore. This person played it very well, even better than her father. Yunke happily ran towards the source of the sound. She wanted to see what the person playing the guqin looked like. After searching for a long time, Yunke finally found that the sound of the guqin was coming from behind the cliff. Thus, she used her qinggong to climb up the cliff. When she looked down from the cliff, she discovered that there was actually a large house in the valley below. In the house, there was a man in white sitting next to a pool of water, playing the zither. She played here when she was young. There was no house and no one. She saw that the man was dressed in snow-white clothes. His long black hair was casually tied up behind his back. Although she only saw half of his face, Yoon-guk swore that he was the most good-looking person she had ever seen. Just like a celestial being from the heavens. After thinking for quite a while, Yoon-guk slowly made a conclusion about the man in the valley. He was as good-looking as an immortal in the sky. There were several other ugly people in the valley. Those bad guys don't look like the family of the immortals at all. Yoon-guk thought unhappily as she sat on the cliff and listened to the melodious music. Why would that godlike person hang out with those ugly villains? It would be great if he could play with her. Those bad guys always didn't allow him to do this or that. If it was her, she definitely wouldn't do that. Yoon-guk squatted on the cliff for 2 whole days, watching the immortal-like man in white sometimes play the zither, sometimes sit by the water and read a book, sometimes do nothing but sit by the water and be lost in thought. Finally finding an opportunity, Yoon-guk took advantage of the absence of those ugly bad guys and directly jumped down from the cliff to land in front of him. Seeing the young girl descending from the sky, the man in white was not surprised. He only smiled faintly. "You're really good-looking." It was the first time Yoon-guk saw the man in white's true appearance. Sure enough, he was better looking than she imagined. The man in white smiled faintly and said softly, "You're also very good-looking. Why are you here?" Yoon-guk didn't know why, but her face felt a little hot. Although she didn't know much about etiquette, it was still rude to praise this man in front of him. Yoon-guk twisted her fingers and blinked her eyes as she looked at the man in white in front of her. As if he felt the young girl's nervousness and helplessness, the man in white smiled faintly and said softly, "It's very dangerous here. Why did you come here alone?" "Dangerous?" Yoon-guk looked around blankly. She had grown up in these mountains, and her father had never told her about the dangers. Seeing her blank look, the man in white smiled and said, "That's right. Since you can jump down from such a high cliff, you must have good martial arts. However, there are many dangers in this world that can't be solved with martial arts. It's better for a girl not to run around." "Oh. I know. My father also said that. You're really a good person." Yoon-guk smiled happily. The man in white looked at the young girl with a pure and innocent smile in front of him in surprise. A strange look flashed in his eyes. Yoon-guk squatted beside him and said unhappily, "I heard you playing the zither, so I wanted to come over and take a look. It's been a long time since someone talked to me. I'll stay for a while and then leave, okay?" The man in white smiled and shook his head. "It's very dangerous here." Yoon-guk blinked and said, "I know. Those people are bad people, right? I'll help you defeat them, okay?" "No, it's too dangerous." The man in white softly refused. "My martial arts are very good. I can defeat them," Yoon-guk anxiously declared. The man in white still shook his head and said, "There are many of them. Even if you defeat them, you can't take me out." Yoon-ji's eyes lit up and said happily, "What if I can take you out?" The man in white smiled and raised his eyebrows. He glanced at the steep cliff not far away. Yoon-guk hurriedly waved her hand and said, "No, I know another way. I played here when I was young. I can definitely get out. Trust me, okay?" Looking at the young girl's pleading eyes, the man in white suddenly laughed softly. It was as warm and charming as the return of spring. Yoon-guk could not help but be stunned. When she came back to her senses, she raised her hand and patted her head in annoyance. Why did she feel that this godlike brother in front of her was delicious and wanted to take a bite? It must be because she had not played with others for too long. "Okay, I believe you. Then I'll have to trouble you. I'm Su Ching-chin. What's your name?" The man in white asked with a smile. Su Qingchen. Your name is really nice. I'm Shin Yun-go. Yun-ji's eyes lit up and she said with a smile. Is my name nice? The man in white, the world-famous young master Qingchen, raised his handsome eyebrows and smiled indifferently. Yun-go took out a pill from her bosom and motioned for Su Qingchen to take it. Although he did not know how the young girl in front of him planned to take him out, young master Qingchen, for the first time in his life, gave his comfort to a young girl who seemed innocent. After taking the pill, his vision turned black and he quickly fell into darkness. When he finally felt a trace of strange coldness, young master Qingchen felt that he did not regret it. Perhaps it was because of the young girl's clear and bright eyes. For the first time, young master Qingchen willfully gave his life to a person he had just met. When he woke up again, young master Qingchen could not help but smile bitterly. As a person, one should not be too willful and take risks. At least, he should ask the young girl how she planned to take him out. Chapter 11:10. Not only was he uncomfortably wet, the pain coming from his chest and shoulders made him unable to move more than half of his body. The eldest young master of the Su family, who had always been known as the immortal young master, was in such a sorry state for the first time in his life. Su Qingchen, are you all right? A somewhat unfamiliar voice came from behind. Su Qingchen turned his head with some difficulty and saw a similarly wet little girl looking at him with a face full of shame. Her bright and beautiful big eyes were full of sparkling tears. Su Qingchen coughed lightly, shook his head and forced a smile. I'm fine, we're out. You brought me out from the bottom of that pool. And I'm sorry. I was too careless and caused you to be injured. Yun-go looked at Su Qingchen anxiously and said guiltily. Su Qingchen smiled faintly and shook his head. This little girl had a petite figure. Su Qingchen could imagine how much effort it took to bring out an adult man who was much taller than her from the bottom of the pool. Compared to that, this little bit of carelessness was really not worth mentioning. But it was really painful. Young Master Qingchen was not a martial artist and rarely got injured in his life. This kind of serious injury was the first time in his life. He could not help but pale from the pain. Seeing him in so much pain, Yun-go could not help but pale with fright. She quickly took out a small medicine bottle and poured a pill into his mouth. Don't be afraid. I will cure you. Soon it will be different. After saying that, she did not care about Su Qingchen's expression and directly picked up young Master Qingchen, who was taller than her, and ran in the direction of her home. It was the first time in his life that he had enjoyed such treatment. Even the calm and composed young Master Qingchen could not help but twitch his face. But the pain from his body clearly reminded him that unless he planned to lie here forever, he could only accept the current situation. Yun-ji's home was located in a hidden valley in the mountains. Su Qingchen had only taken a brief look at the entrance of the valley when she entered, and she knew that there was a rather brilliant formation set up at the entrance of the valley. It was basically difficult for people who were not proficient in formations to find this place. When young Master Qingchen found out that the little girl had been living alone in the valley since her father passed away 3 years ago, he could not help but sigh softly in his heart when he saw the little girl looking at him happily with sparkling eyes. Young Master Qingchen had seen countless people in his life, but this was the first time he had seen such an innocent little girl. It was hard to understand why Yun-ji's father would leave his innocent and young daughter alone in the deep mountains. Although Yun-ji's martial arts were not weak, martial arts could not determine everything in this world. Compared to the high ground of martial arts, the viciousness of the human heart was far more dangerous. Yun-go was a very simple girl. She was like a chick that had just hatched, instinctively trusting the first person she saw. After her father passed away, young Master Qin Qin was the first person who had a close relationship with Yungu. Therefore, young Master Qin Qin naturally became Yun Ji's most trusted person. Hence, after finding out about Yun Ji's father's arrangements, Sir Qin Qin had effortlessly persuaded the young lady to leave the valley with him. After confirming that the Mu family had no intention of taking care of Yungu, he naturally brought the young lady back to Glass City. Su Qin Qin. The bustling Glass City made Yungu somewhat uncomfortable. Her beautiful little face was filled with uneasiness and worry. And the Su residence that was already in sight made her stop in her tracks. Although Su Qin Qin said that the Su family would be her home in the future, no matter how ignorant Yungu was, she still understood that the Su family was Su Qin Qin's home and not her own home. She no longer had a home. Don't be afraid. Everyone in our family is very good. They will all like you. Just like Li. Don't you like her very much? Young Master Qin Qin comforted her softly. Sister Li. Speaking of Sister Li, Yun Ji's eyes could not help but brighten. Sister Li, was her first good friend other than Su Qin Qin. Moreover, Sister Li, was very beautiful and gentle. On the way up north, she had heard many people say that Sister Li, was the most amazing woman in the world. Not only was she beautiful, her martial arts were good, and she could even lead troops to war. It was a pity that Sister Li had gone to war. She could not follow and cause trouble. Su Qin Qin nodded and smiled. Yes, Li is my cousin. We are all family. Could it be that Yungu does not like the Su residence? Then you can also live in the Prince Ding mansion. However, there is no one in the Prince Ding mansion now. If Yungu lives alone. No, I will live in the Su residence. Yungu hurriedly shook her head. Young Master Qin Qin's lips curled into a faint smile. That's good. Let's go. Everyone is already here to welcome us. Young Master Qin Qin had returned from his tribulation and brought back a beautiful lady. The Su family who had received the news long ago turned out in full force to welcome them at the door. Seeing the two of them appear, almost everyone's eyes were attracted to the beautiful lady in yellow next to young Master Qin Qin. Madame Su repeatedly praised them. She happily went forward and carefully sized up Yungu. She smiled and asked, "Young lady, are you Yungu? You must have had a tough journey." Yungu was a little embarrassed to be held by the gentle and noble lady in front of her. However, she still nodded and said, "Yes, I am Shin Yungu. This is my mother and second aunt." Yungu can call them aunts, Su Qin Qin said with a faint smile. Aunts. Hello, aunts, Brother Yun said softly. Good child. Madame Su nodded repeatedly. She looked at the young lady in front of her with satisfaction. This was the first time her son had personally brought a lady home. Moreover, she could tell at a glance that this was a good and obedient lady. Even her niece's letter had repeatedly praised her. Madame Su trusted Yi Li's judgment. Seeing Yun Ji's blushing and helpless appearance, Qin Zheng covered her mouth and smiled. Aunts, mother, let's go in first. Sister Yungu must be tired from the journey. Sister Yungu, my name is Qin Zheng. You can call me Sister Zheng. Did Li mention me? Yungu hurriedly nodded. Sister Li said that Sister Zheng is a good person. Thank you, Sister Zheng. Yungu is not tired. My martial arts are very good. Seeing the young lady's honest appearance, everyone could not help but laugh in unison. Second Madame Su pursed her lips and smiled. All right, Zheng is right. Let's go in first. Yungu, just treat the Su family as your own home in the future. Madame Su nodded and said, your second aunt is right. Just treat this as your own home in the future. let's go in and rest. My own words. Yoonji-ee's heart softened. Looking at the smiling people in front of her, she could not help but blink, feeling a little jealous. Yoon-gu, let's go in. Chin-jang held Yoonji-ee's hand and smiled softly. Yes, thank you, Sister Jang. Yoon-gu nodded heavily. Su Qingchen's family was as good as sisterly. Following Su Qingchen all the way to the north, her uneasy heart finally relaxed. Yoon-gu could not help but give Chin-jang a bright smile. Chapter 11:11. The days of living in the Su family were both happy and uneasy for Yoon-gu. Everyone in the Su family was very easy to get along with. This was a novel and interesting experience for Yoon-gu, who had only been accompanied by her father since she was a child. The two madams of the Su family and Sister Chin-jang were very concerned about her. Although she needed to learn a lot of things that she had never known, which made her a little depressed that she was so stupid, the two aunts of the Su family and Sister Chin-jang were not angry and often comforted her. What really made Yoon-gu depressed was that she felt a little afraid of Su Qingchen along the way. Because, most of the people in the Su family were afraid of him. Moreover, Su Qingchen was really fierce. Even if Su Qingchen was sick and weak, and she was a healthy person with strong martial arts, she was still afraid of Su Qingchen. Yoon-gu. Yoon-gu. In the study, Yoon-gu was trying hard to trace the calligraphy left by young Master Qingchen. Hearing Chin-jang's voice, she raised her head and touched her little face. A black ink stain immediately stained the originally white and beautiful little face, but the owner of the little face was at a loss. Sister. Zheng-her, Chin-jang stood at the door and looked at the girl sitting behind the desk in a daze. She could not help but cover her mouth and smile. Yoon-gu, what are you doing? Yoon-gu pursed her little mouth and said with some grievance, I'm practicing calligraphy. Chin-jang walked forward and looked at Yoon-ji-ee's handwriting. She smiled and said, Yoon-ji-ee's calligraphy has improved. It's very good. Why are you still practicing? Chin-jang was born in a scholarly family and was once a famous talented woman in the Chu capital. For her to say that Yoon-ji-ee's calligraphy was very good, it could be seen that Yoon-ji-ee's calligraphy was indeed good. Yoon-gu whispered, Su Qingchen said that practicing calligraphy can hone one's temperament. Her big pitiful eyes blinked at Chin-jang and almost engraved the words I don't want to write on her face. Looking at Yoon-ji-ee's pitiful appearance, Chin-jang could only sigh helplessly. Although Yoon-gu was occasionally a little naughty, she was also well-behaved and pitiful. Even Madame Su could not bear to see her being so stubborn about young Master Qingchen's words. However, no matter how much Yoon-gu disliked young Master Qingchen's orders, as long as young Master Qingchen gave the order, Yoon-gu would do it without any hesitation. Chin-jang smiled and wiped the ink stains on Yoon-ji-ee's face with a handkerchief. She smiled faintly and said, Yoon-gu is very good. Why do you have to stay in the room every day to hone your temperament? I'm going to look for Ting and Tian-xiang to go shopping together. Yoon-gu, do you want to come along? Seeing the ink on Chin-jang's snow-white handkerchief, Yoon-gu knew that she had made a fool of herself. She quickly took the handkerchief from Chin-jang's hand and wiped it herself. Hearing Chin-jang's words, Yoon-gu was also very moved, but looking at the half-written words on the table, her delicate little face could not help but fall. If Su Qingchen knew that she ran out halfway, he would definitely punish her twice the amount of gratitude. Her fingers would be broken. All right, let's go. Sister Zhang will help you talk to Big Brother, okay? Big Brother will always be reasonable. How can a little girl sit at home every day without moving? Chin-jang smiled and pulled Yoon-gu out. Sister-in-law, where are you going? Just as they left the study room, they bumped into young Master Qingchen. He clearly had a smile that made people feel like they were bathed in the spring breeze, but in Yoonji's eyes, she was like a mouse that saw a cat and quickly hid behind Qingjing. Seeing this situation, although the smile on Su Qingchen's face did not change, his eyes darkened slightly. Qingjing did not feel that there was anything wrong with the atmosphere between the two at all. She smiled generously and said, "Big brother, I was just about to look for you. Tian Xiang and I want to go out for a walk together with Wu Yu. Coincidentally, we also brought Yungu out." She stayed in the residence all day and did not go anywhere. Look at her little face, it's a little haggard. Actually, Yungu was not haggard, but after Qingjing said this, Su Qingchen also felt that Yunji's smile did not seem to be as bright and beautiful as before she came to Glass City. When she saw him, she also seemed to be avoiding him. Actually, young Master Qingchen was also very wronged. When he was recuperating in the valley, he got along very well with Yungu and Yungu was also very close to him. But after coming out, Yungu became a little afraid of him for no reason. Young Master Qingchen was extremely wise, but he did not understand what he had done to make the little girl so afraid of him. Young Master Qingchen's charm that always succeeded seemed to have lost its effect. No matter how he treated Yungu, she always looked like she was obedient to him. After a moment of silence, Su Qingchen glanced at Yunji's big yearning eyes that quietly appeared behind Qingjing. He sighed helplessly in his heart and said, "You can't go out today." Yunji's originally bright eyes suddenly dimmed. Su Qingchen continued, "Shenyang, Mr. Shenyang is here and wants to see you." "Mr. Shenyang." Yungu blinked and quickly reacted. "Is it that godly Dr. Shenyang?" Yungu studied medicine and naturally paid special attention to Shenyang, this world-famous godly doctor. Although she knew that Shenyang was in Glass City, ever since she came to the Su family, she had been helping to learn all kinds of etiquette and knowledge. Afterwards, Su Qingchen arranged all kinds of homework for her. She simply did not have the time to sneak out to visit Shenyang. Su Qingchen nodded and asked, "Does Yungu want to see him?" "Of course I want to see him. Why would Mr. Shen personally come to see me?" Yungu hurriedly asked. At the same time, she was somewhat excited and puzzled. Shenyang was the world-famous godly doctor, the #1 doctor of the Prince Ding mansion. She was only an unknown little girl. How did Shenyang know of her? Su Qingchen nodded and said, "Since that is the case, let's go to the reception hall. Princess Changle has also come." In the reception hall, Shenyang was sitting and drinking tea. However, the angry expression on his face did not seem like he had come to pay a visit. Grand Madame Su sat to the side, accompanying him, a faint helplessness on her face. Although Shenyang was only a doctor of the Prince Ding mansion, he had saved Prince Ding's life. Within the Prince Ding mansion and the Mahist army, he was rather famous. Just based on his godly medical skills, the Su family could not be disrespectful. Moreover, this time, the Su family had indeed acted inappropriately. "Teacher, don't scare Yungu." Mo Wuyo, who was sitting next to Shenyang, covered her mouth and smiled faintly. She had seen Yungu several times and was very fond of that adorable girl. It was just that she did not expect Yungu to have a relationship with her teacher. Shenyang lightly snorted, muttering in a low voice about a girl's appearance. Mo Wuyo's pretty face immediately turned crimson, not daring to persuade him any further. "Aunt Su, has godly Dr. Shen really come?" Yungu had just arrived at the door when her voice traveled in. Grand Madame Su smiled and beckoned to her, saying, "Yungu, quickly come over. This is Shenyang, godly Dr. Shen. Quickly come and greet him." Yungu stepped forward and properly saluted. "Yungu greets godly Dr. Shen." Shenyang lowered his eyes and glanced at Yungu, a trace of warmth flashing through his eyes. Only then did he nod and say, "You have learned the rules well." Hearing this, Yungu somewhat shyly lowered her head and said, "It was all taught by Aunt Sue and Sister Zheng, Originally, she had felt somewhat bored while learning etiquette. However, now that Shenyang had praised her, she suddenly felt that all the hard work had been worth it. She did not know why, but when she saw godly Dr. Shin, who seemed to have a bad temper, she felt particularly close. She attributed this to her admiration for Shenyang. Chapter 11-12. Madame Su pulled Yungu to her with a smile and said, "Yungu is a smart and well-behaved child." Madame Su really liked Yungu when she said this. Not only because Yungu was brought back by her son, but also because of Yunji's temperament. Madame Su family, who had no daughter, really loved her. Although she had a niece like Yili, Yili's temperament was calm and quiet. She was one of the most extraordinary women in the world. Therefore, there were very few things that Madame Su could care for and help her with. Moreover, Yungu was so innocent and clueless about the world, which made Madame Su even more worried and distressed. While talking, Su Qingchen and Qingjing also followed. Seeing Su Qingchen, Shenyang's face, which had eased a little, turned ugly again. He snorted and said nothing with a cold face. Su Qingchen was not offended. He smiled faintly and said, "Yungu, have you met Mr. Shin?" Yungu looked at Shenyang, who was suddenly angry, and then at Su Qingchen, who was smiling. She nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, Mr. Shin praised me." Su Qingchen smiled and said warmly, "Is that so? Mr. Shin rarely praises people. But Yungu can't be proud." Yungu nodded repeatedly, but her pair of bright eyes had already been glued to Shenyang. Since her father passed away, there was no one to guide her medical skills. If she had doubts, she could only explore slowly by herself. She had not made any progress for a long time. Thinking of this, Yungu looked at Shenyang with more enthusiasm. Seeing Yungu looking at Shenyang with undisguised admiration, Su Qingchen's expression darkened slightly. He looked at Shenyang and said, "Mr. Shin, what do you have to say? Yungu is here now, so feel free to speak." Shenyang snorted softly, but looked at Yungu with a gentle gaze. Although he respected the Su family, it did not mean that he could understand the fact that the Su family hid Yunji's identity from him. In any case, Yungu was a member of the Shin family. "Yungu, come here. This is for you. It's my meeting gift." Shenyang took out a simple jade box and handed it over. Yungu could not help but look at Su Qingchen. Seeing him nod, she walked over and took the box in Shenyang's hand, but Shenyang's face darkened again. Yungu curiously opened the box and saw a set of silver needles neatly placed inside. Yunji's little face lit up, and she hesitated for a moment before saying, This is the hibiscus needle that Daddy talked about." Shenyang nodded and said with a smile, "That's right, it's the hibiscus needle. I don't need it now. Since you're also a medical student, I'll give it to you." To ordinary people, this hibiscus was nothing more than a silver needle. However, to a doctor, it was a rare treasure. Yungu was naturally overjoyed, but he was also a little uneasy. Yungu can't accept it." Shenyang raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why not?" Yungu bit the corner of her lips and said, "Father said that it wasn't easy to create the hibiscus needle. This is the only set left in the world. Yunj can't accept such a valuable gift from Mr. Shin." Shenyang looked at Yungu and smiled thoughtfully. "Yungu, I heard that your medical skills are pretty good." Yungu blushed slightly. Yunji's medical skills have not improved for a long time. "Do you think I can give you some pointers?" Shenyang smiled. Since Shenyang had made it so clear, how could Yungu not understand? She said happily, Mr. Shin, are you willing to take me as your disciple? Shin Yang shook his head. Seeing Yun Ji's disappointed eyes, he smiled and said, my surname is Shin, so is yours. I'm old now, but I don't have any children. Are you willing to take me as your godfather? Godfather? Yun-gu was stunned. Shin Yang took it as her agreement and smiled with satisfaction. Good girl, this is a gift from your godfather. Keep it well. He raised his hand and put the jade box with the silver needles into Yun Ji's hands. Ha! Yun-gu was at a loss. Did she agree? Mr. Shin, isn't this? Mrs. Su frowned and said. Yun-gu didn't know, but they knew the relationship between Shin Yang and Yun-gu. In terms of seniority, Shin Yang was already Yun Ji's granduncle. How could he take her as his goddaughter? Su Qingchen lowered his eyes and pondered for a moment. He smiled and said, Yun-gu, you're a medical student. It's fate that you have the same surname as Mr. Shin. Are you willing to be Mr. Shin's goddaughter? Yun-gu looked up at Shin Yang, who was looking at her lovingly. She whispered, if I take Mr. Shin as my godfather, will Mr. Shin dote on me as much as my father? Shin Yang nodded and smiled. Of course. I'll teach you everything I've learned in my life. And Wuyo, although she's 2 months younger than you, she joined first. It's up to you to call her whatever you want. You're about the same age. You can learn and play together in the future. You can be companions. Senior Sister Wuyo. Sister Yun-gu. Yun-gu and Wuyo said in unison. Before their voices died away, they couldn't help but laugh. Godfather. Yun-gu called. Good girl. Shin Yang's eyes were slightly red. He looked at Yun-gu and nodded. He was unmarried and had no children. His nephew, whom he had high hopes for, had gone far away for his wife. Now, Yun-gu was the only bloodline left in the Shin family. Congratulations, Mr. Shin, for taking in such a well-behaved daughter. Madame Su smiled. Although the confusion in seniority gave Madame Su a headache. However, since Shin Yang didn't mind and her son agreed, she didn't have any objections. Yun Ji's parents had nothing to do with Yun-gu. Shin Yang didn't want to mention it for Yun Ji's sake. Shin Yang nodded. He glanced at Su Qingchen and said calmly, Thank you, Madame Su. In that case, I have something to discuss with Madame Su. Madame Su was stunned. She smiled and said, Mr. Shin, feel free to speak. You don't have to be so polite. Shin Yang said, since Yun-gu has taken me as her godfather, she's also my Shin family's daughter. I'll take Yun-gu back to the mansion in the next 2 days. Thank you for taking care of her for this period of time. Although Shin Yang spent most of his time in the Prince Ding mansion, he also had his own mansion in Glass City. Hearing Shin Yang's words, Madame Su was only stunned for a moment. Su Qingchen, who was sitting below, immediately looked embarrassed. Chapter 11-13. Shin Yang suddenly proposed to take Yun-gu away. For a moment, everyone in the Su family couldn't accept it. Although Yun-gu hadn't been in the Su family for a long time, the Su family really liked this lively, simple and lovely girl. Mrs. Su, who didn't have a daughter, treated Yun-gu better than her sons. On the other hand, Mrs. Su still secretly hoped that this little girl would become the daughter-in-law of the Su family. Now that Yun-gu suddenly wanted to leave, how could Mrs. Su not be sad? However, Shin Yang was Yun Ji's blood relative. Even if he had become Yun Ji's adoptive father now, their relationship was much closer than that of the Su family. Shin Yang said that he wanted to take Yun-gu away. Even the Su family couldn't find a reason to refuse. Suppressing the anxiety in her heart, Mrs. Su looked at her son sitting in the lower seat. She hoped that he could come up with a reasonable excuse to refuse Shenyang. Su Qingchen looked up at Shenyang. The expression on his face had returned to its usual gentleness. He smiled faintly and said, "Mr. Shin, you have been very busy these months. How can you have time to take care of Yungu? If Yungu lives in your mansion, isn't it the same as when she lived in the mountains? How could living in his mansion be the same as living in the mountains?" Shenyang was displeased and wanted to refute. Before he spoke, Su Qingchen continued, "What's more, even if you're not busy, there isn't even a woman in your mansion. If Yungu comes to your mansion, there will be no one to accompany or teach her." Mrs. Su's eyes lit up. She quickly smiled and said, "That's right, Mr. Shin. You know that Yungu used to live with her father, and there was no one to teach her many things that a girl should learn. If Mr. Shin's surname is better than mine, give Yungu to me. I promise that I will teach Yungu to be the most educated and well-behaved girl." Well. Shenyang frowned. It didn't matter whether Yungu could become a well-behaved girl or not, but Mrs. Su was right. She had to learn the rules of many girls more or less. He couldn't take care of Yungu for a lifetime. She had to get married in the future. It was fine to spoil her when she was a girl, and it didn't matter whether she knew how to do it or not. But in the future, when she married into her husband's family, she definitely wouldn't be able to escape her mother-in-law's love even if she didn't know anything. Seeing Shenyang hesitate, Qingzheng hurriedly smiled and said, "Aunt is right. Mr. Shen, Yunj is serious in her studies. I believe it won't be long before she can make up for all her shortcomings." Before she finished learning Yunj, she was still living in our house and learned more from eldest aunt. "If Mr. Shin wants to guide Yunj in her medical skills, why don't you go to the pharmacy or your residence during the day, just like Wuyo?" Shenyang looked hesitantly at Yungu, who was standing at the side. He frowned and pondered. He was quite busy these days. There was a war going on outside. Although he didn't need to go to the front line, he still needed to prepare the medicinal herbs to be transported to the front line. If that's the case. "Thank you, Madam Su." Shenyang couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He had angrily rushed into someone else's house, but in the end, he still had to trouble them. Madam Su didn't care at all. She smiled and said, "Yunj is very obedient. Everyone in our family is very busy. Sister-in-law and Jing often accompany her, but I'm all alone. I'm happy to have Yunj as my companion." Yungut stood at the side and blinked. She looked at Shenyang. Was she still going to live in the Su family? In fact, she quite liked the Su family. Everyone in the Su family was very good. She couldn't bear to part with them. Does Yunj want to live with Mr. Shin? Young Master Qingchen looked at Yungu with a faint smile and said softly, "When you pass your studies, you can go back with Mr. Shin. Before that, Yunj has to study hard and don't let Mr. Shin down." Yungu shrunk her neck. She only felt a cold wind blowing above her head. Her bright and beautiful eyes suddenly dimmed. Her face, which was originally full of smiles, looked like she had eaten coptis. Her small head shook vigorously and nodded. "Boo-hoo. Godfather, Su Qingchen is so scary." Unfortunately, Shenyang only treated her as his new goddaughter. His only blood relative in this world was indeed raised astray by her father and didn't like to study. He didn't receive Yunji's cry for help at all. After sending Shenyang off, Yungu once again ushered in a new learning climax. Every day, other than the half-day appointment with Shenyang to study medicine, Yungu spent most of her time going to the study and on the way to the study. Moreover, ever since Shenyang brought his goddaughter to Glass City, more and more talented young men and women came to Shenyang's clinic with various excuses or happened to bump into him on the way. It couldn't be helped. Shenyang's two female disciples not only had good medical skills, but they were also as beautiful as flowers. Unfortunately, Mo Weo was already betrothed to the fourth young master of the Su family. There was no hope for this eldest disciple, but this youngest disciple and goddaughter could still be relied on. Thus, Yunke tragically found that she always had endless homework to do. Every time she felt that she had learned well and could be free, she would be ashamed to find that she was so stupid that she couldn't be seen in front of Su Qingchen the next day. She had to continue to study hard. Then, she would return to the study with more books and homework. Even eldest Madame Su couldn't stand young Master Qingchen's attitude of wanting to teach others. After Yungu rejected her suggestion to take her out for a walk for the fifth time with a face full of longing and refusal, eldest Madame Su finally couldn't help but talk to her son. Yungu is a girl. She doesn't need to take the imperial examination. Why are you pushing her so hard? Eldest Madame Su sighed when she saw her son's calm appearance. Young Master Qingchen said sternly, "Other girls don't need to take the imperial examination. Didn't they also learn from a young age? Yungu is more than 10 years late. Naturally, she has to be more attentive. I don't mind if my daughter-in-law isn't a talented girl." Eldest Madame Su couldn't help but say silently in her heart, "Mother, Yunke hasn't met any outsiders since she was young. But she's also very active. If she's deceived by others, how are you going to explain it to Mr. Shin? Didn't you hear Weo say that people have been looking for Yungu recently? There's no need to be afraid since Mr. Shin is in charge of the clinic. What if she runs out to play by herself? Is that so?" Eldest Madame Su was also a little nervous. Young Master Qingchen nodded and said, "Of course, that's why I'm doing this. When Yungu learns more and understands more, she'll naturally be more relaxed. Since Mr. Shin entrusted Yungu to us, we should enjoy ourselves to the fullest, right?" Eldest Madame Su frowned and nodded while thinking. She didn't notice that she had been led out of the study by Su Qingchen. After taking a few more steps forward, eldest Madame Su stopped. She turned back and said angrily, "Damn boy, Weo won't tell you this. Yungu is so obedient. How could she?" At the door, young Master Qingchen's figure had disappeared without a trace. Knowing that no one could change her son's mind, eldest Madame Su could only sigh and shake her head helplessly. She'd better go and see Yungu and stew some tonic for her. Poor child. But Yungu was also obedient. If she didn't want to learn, she could just beat Su Qingchen up. At least Su Qingchen couldn't beat her, right? Eldest Madame Su was a little absent-minded. Chapter 11-14. Thus, Yunji's painstaking study continued until Prince Ding and Princess Consort returned in triumph. Yungu heaved a sigh of relief, and her respect for young Master Qingchen increased. In the past, if someone had asked Yungu what kind of person young Master Qingchen was, Yungu would have said that young Master Qingchen was the most handsome, powerful, and intelligent person in the world. But now, if someone had asked her what kind of person young Master Qingchen was, Yunji's answer would be that young Master Qingchen was the most handsome, powerful, and responsible teacher in the world. Prince Ding and Princess Ding returned in triumph, and the world was at peace. After years of war, the people had obtained temporary peace. The entire glass city was bustling with noise and excitement. A few days after the birthday banquet of the little heir and princess of the Prince Ding mansion, it was time for the wedding banquet of the third and fourth young masters of the Su family. The guests who came to Glass City for the birthday banquet had not left yet, so they naturally joined in the fun and attended the Su family's wedding banquet. At the wedding banquet, as the elder brother of the two grooms, no matter how otherworldly young Master Qingchen was, he could not avoid the fate of being dragged by the guests to drink. During this period, many people did not forget to participate in other activities. Why don't I see young Master Su's wife? A prince of a small country in the western region asked in a somewhat stiff Central Plains dialect. Su Qingchen, who was toasting, glanced at the princess of the western region, who was sitting below the prince and staring at him. His eyes darkened slightly as he smiled and said, "I am not married yet." The prince of the western region's eyes lit up. "That's great. What do you think of my younger sister, Prime Minister Su? She is the most beautiful and virtuous lady in our country." The princess of the western region was open-minded, so there was nothing to be embarrassed about. She looked eagerly at the handsome man in front of her. Young Master Qingchen was startled. He smiled and shook his head to decline. "I'm afraid I will have to disappoint you." The prince of the western region did not understand. Why? Young Master Qingchen was unmarried, and his younger sister was unmarried. Both of them were of similar status and appearance, so why would he not agree? Young Master Qingchen was about to speak when he caught a glimpse of a delicate figure walking by and turned to the corridor in front. Of course, she did not miss a certain handsome young master who was following behind her. Young Master Qingchen's eyes darkened. He smiled faintly and said, "Sorry, I already have a fiancé." "That's impossible. I've never heard of her." The princess of the western region shouted in disbelief, "Who is she? I want to challenge her. I just walked over." Young Master Qingchen smiled. If it was someone else, they might not know who young Master Qingchen was talking about. However, the princess of the western region was sitting in the direction where Yungu had gone. What was more, she happened to know Yungu. The princess of the western region looked at young Master Qingchen in surprise. "No. Even if she's prettier than me, she's still a child. Why would you like her? She's not 13 yet." Young Master Qingchen was speechless. Yungu was almost 17 years old. However, the people of the western regions naturally thought that Yungu was still young. Moreover, Yungu was lively and loved to laugh. In the eyes of the western region's princess, she was still a child. "I absolutely cannot lose to a child. I want to challenge her." The princess of the western regions did not attend the banquet. She immediately stood up and chased after Yungu. The prince of the western region was afraid that his sister would cause trouble, so he hurriedly got up and chased after her. Young Master Qingchen patted his shoulder and said, "Prince, please take a seat. I'll go down and take a look." The prince of the western region thought for a while and nodded. "All right. You're the one who caused this trouble. You should settle it yourself." He really did not force him to marry his sister. He was just casually asking. Young Master Qingchen smiled and nodded. He also slowly followed. The entire Su residence was bustling. The guests were also toasting and exchanging toasts. Not many people noticed that young Master Qingchen had quietly left. "Miss Shen." "Miss Shen," Yungu glared at the person following behind her irritably. She decided to use her qinggong to leave this place. This person always followed her every time she met him. When she stopped to ask him what was going on, he would not tell her. Once she left, he would follow her. She planned to go to the bridal chamber to see Wuyo and Sister Tianxiang. Why was this guy following her? Miss Shen, what are you trying to say?" Yungu said unhappily. Su Qingchen said that she could not let people call her name all the time. That was not good. Su Qingchen said that there was a man she did not know who kept following her and calling her a bad person. She should just beat him up. However, this guy did not seem to be a bad person. A few days ago, she saw him helping an old man up after being knocked down. To beat, or not to beat? Miss Shen. Seeing the beautiful and charming girl under the moonlight, the handsome man could not help but blush. He was somewhat at a loss. "Ah, Miss Shen, I have something to say to you. I know. You've been following me for a few days. Have you finally remembered what you want to say? Hurry up and say it. Don't call me again. Otherwise, I'll really beat you." Yungu nodded. "Ah." The man was stunned. He laughed dryly and said, "Miss Shen really likes to joke. Such a delicate girl, even if she beat him, it would not hurt, right?" In order to reassure the beauty. "If Miss Shen wants to beat me, then do it. I won't hide," the man said righteously. "Ah." This time, it was Yun Ji's turn to be dumbfounded. "Ah. You'd better hurry up and say what you want to say. If you're done, I'll be leaving. I'm busy." The man hurriedly nodded and said happily, "Miss Shen, I want to say. My surname is Mei Changshi. I'm 18 this year. My father is a prefect of a state." "Ah. That's not important. I'm studying at Lishan Academy. I just finished my military service last year. Although I can't be said to be proficient in both literature and martial arts, I'm definitely not a weak scholar. I will definitely be able to protect you. My family." Although she felt that it was impolite to interrupt him, Yungu could not help but say, What do you want to say?" Did she need his protection? She could send him flying with a slap. Furthermore, she did not know him. The man was stunned. He finally realized that he had not gotten to the point after talking for so long. Gritting his teeth, the man said firmly, "Miss Shin, what I want to say is. To you, Yungu, what are you doing here?" A clear voice sounded from not far away. Under the moonlight, a man in white walked over slowly. With a faint smile, his handsome face seemed to be covered with a layer of halo under the moonlight. People could not help but look away. But the man surnamed Mei, who was standing beside Yungu, suddenly felt a gust of cold wind and sneezed on the spot. "What are you doing here?" Walking to Yunji's side, young Master Qingchen smiled and raised his hand to stroke Yunji's hair that was blown to the front by the night wind. Yungu blinked. "Where should I go if not to the bridal chamber? It's too dark. Be careful not to fall." Young Master Qingchen smiled faintly. Why was Su Qingchen so strange? How could she fall? Why did she feel so redundant? Young Master Mei thought gloomily. Young Master Qingchen, you and Miss Shen know each other. Yungu, I've finally found you. I want to duel with you. If I win, young Master Qingchen will be mine. Not far away, the princess of the western region saw the three people and her eyes lit up. She quickly rushed over. Chapter 11:15. The princess of the western region rushed to the three of them and was surprised to see that Su Qingchen was also there. Young Master Qingchen, why are you here? The Su residence was not big, but it was not small either. It was obvious that the princess of the western region had lost her way in the garden and allowed young Master Qingchen to catch up with Yungu first. Su Qingchen smiled but did not speak. Yungu was at a loss. That. Princess, why do you want to challenge me? What does this have to do with Su Qingchen? She did not have a strong opinion about winning or losing. If the princess of the western region wanted to win so badly, she would just admit defeat. But what did she mean by Su Qingchen would belong to her if she won? Although Yungu was at a loss, looking at young Master Qingchen's smiling face, her intuition told her that she could not accept or admit defeat so easily. The princess of the western region was a little unhappy. She felt that Yungu was deliberately playing dumb and refused to accept her challenge. She pouted and said, "Aren't you young Master Qinchen's fiancé? I like young Master Qinchen. I want to challenge you. If you lose, you have to give young Master Qinchen to me." What? Young Master Mei was shocked. Miss Shen was actually young Master Qinchen's fiancé. Why did he not know such big news? He actually wanted to propose to young Master Qinchen's fiancé. Looking at young Master Qinchen, who was smiling like a spring breeze, and then looking at himself, young Master Mei could not help but cry in his heart. What? Yungu blinked with a blank face. When did she become Su Qinchen's fiancé? No. She did not want to be Su Qinchen's fiancé. It was already very pitiful to be under his control now. If she became his fiancé, would she not be buried in the Book Mountain for the rest of her life? Yungu shook her head bitterly. She really did not like to study. Yungu was about to say that she admitted defeat when a hand gently rested on her shoulder from behind. Yungu turned around and met young Master Qinchen's smiling eyes. But Yungu could clearly see the threat in his eyes. "Do you want to copy books again?" Of course, Yungu did not want to copy books, so she could only submit to young Master Qinchen's abuse of power. Yungu looked at the princess of the Western region with some grievance. "What do you want to compete in?" The sky was a little dark, so the princess of the Western region couldn't see the expression on Yunji's face clearly. He thought for a moment and said, "Let's compete in martial arts." People in the Western regions revered martial arts, but it seemed that no woman in the Central Plains knew martial arts except for Princess Ding. The princess of the Western region looked at the handsome young Master Qinchen who was standing behind Yungu. Her heart was filled with confidence. "Yunj, you're not allowed to lose." Young Master Qinchen chuckled softly. Yungu trembled and nodded sadly at the princess of the Western region. The princess of the Western region was naturally not Yunji's opponent. Although Yungu was young, her martial arts were among the top in the entire Glass City. However, she was beautiful and had a lively and cute personality. She was also taken care of by Shenyang and the Su family, so there was basically no chance for her to make a move. Therefore, even in Glass City, only a handful of people knew that she knew martial arts. Thus, under young Master Mei's shocked gaze, the princess of the Western region was sent flying by Yungu in just a few moves. Seeing Yunji's skills, young Master Mei's face was filled with shame. He had just boasted shamelessly that he would protect Miss Shin. The princess of the Western region was also a forthright woman. She admired Su Qinchen and directly challenged Yungu. She was not angry even when she lost. She stood up and patted the dust off her body. She waved at Yungu and left. She did not even look at young Master Qinchen. The garden quieted down again. Young Master Mei looked at Su Qinchen and Yungu who were standing in front of him without saying a word. He touched his nose awkwardly and quietly left. Yungu looked at Su Qinchen in a daze. She was not someone who was good at changing her mind. The sudden appearance of a fiancé made her feel awkward and helpless. "That. Su Qinchen, I'm going to see Wuyo and Sister Tianxiang first. Also, don't talk nonsense. I'm not your fiancé." After she finished speaking, she did not care about Su Qinchen's reaction. She directly used her qinggong to sweep past the flowers and trees in the garden and hurried in the direction of Hua Tianxiang's bridal chamber. She looked as if she was afraid that someone would chase after her. Young Master Qinchen looked helplessly at the figure that disappeared into the distance. He sighed softly. Just as he was about to turn and leave, a muffled laugh came from the roof behind him. Young Master Qinchen turned around and saw Prince Ding, who had disappeared not long after the banquet started. He was sitting lazily on the roof with Princess Ding in his arms and looking down with a smile. Looking at Mo Xiaoyao's gloating expression, he knew that a certain someone must have seen everything from the beginning to the end. When did Prince Ding start to peek at other people's private matters? Su Qingchen said unhappily. Mo Xiaoyao laughed heartily. He held Yili's waist with one hand and floated down from the roof. He looked at young Master Qingchen with a smile and said, I have always liked to laugh at others. Didn't young Master Qingchen already know? Yili smiled apologetically at Su Qingchen and said softly, Big brother, did you scare Yungu? Yili had secretly tested Yungu several times. That little girl was raised by her father in the mountains and had little contact with others. As a result, her mind matured much later than the average girl. She could not think of love at all. At first, she thought that Su Qingchen was good-looking and wanted someone to accompany her, so she took the risk to save him. Later, she found that Su Qingchen was a good teacher and she was a stupid student. So now, the student was afraid of the teacher, like a mouse seeing a cat. If Su Qingchen suddenly proposed to her now, Yili dared to bet that Yunji's first thought would be that if they got married, they would stay together forever and she would be taught by Su Qingchen for the rest of her life. Therefore, the success rate of young Master Qingchen's proposal was probably even lower than that of young Master Mei. Do you want to marry a wife or find a student? I have never seen anyone teach their future wife like a student, and even treat her more seriously than a student. Can't you see that the little girl wants to run away when she sees you? Mo Xiaoyao mocked lazily. Even he could see the little girl's pitiful look when she saw Su Qingchen. She felt wronged but did not dare to refute. Fortunately, the girl's parents were no longer around. If any man dared to treat his darling like that, I would kill him. His Highness Prince Ding thought with a murderous look. Su Qingchen looked thoughtful. Yili smiled faintly and said, Big brother, Yungu has learned very well. Even Zheng He and eldest aunt have praised her. She has no interest in music, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry and songs. Don't force her anymore. Mo Xiaoyao hugged Yili and laughed gloatingly. Be careful not to force the little girl too much. You can't beat her. Thank you, Prince, for your advice. Young Master Qingchen said indifferently. He waved to Yili and turned to leave. As he walked, the smile on young Master Qingchen's lips gradually faded. She didn't like it. Then he would tell her later that he would not force her to learn. In fact, the little girl clearly did not want to learn but was aggrieved and did not dare to say anything. She was very cute. Chapter 11:16. Su Qingchen didn't have the chance to tell Yungu his decision because the next morning, the Su family found that Yungu was missing. She wasn't missing or kidnapped, but Yungu left a letter telling everyone that she was going out to practice medicine to help the world. Staring at his beautiful letter for a long time, young Master Qingchen was sure of one thing. The little girl he had raised for more than half a year had run away from home. Qingchen, look at this. Lady Su took the letter left by Yungu with some embarrassment and looked at her son with some worry. Young Master Qingchen's expression really made Lady Su a little worried. She had never seen her son so sad in her life. Lady Su was happy and worried at the same time. She was happy because she finally confirmed that her son really treated Yungu differently. She was worried that Yungu was alone outside. What if she encountered danger? And looking at her son's expression now, he would probably teach Yungu a lesson when he found her. Wouldn't Yungu be more afraid of him then? When would she be able to marry her eldest daughter-in-law? After thinking about it, Lady Su decided to talk to her son first. Qingchen, don't worry. I've already sent a letter to Li. We'll find Yungu soon. But when Yungu comes back, don't scare her anymore. She's a poor little girl. Young Master Qingchen was stunned. He looked at his mother and asked, "Mother, you also think I'm not good to Yungu?" Lady Su couldn't help rolling her eyes and lamenting, "What sin have I committed? Why did I give birth to such a stupid son? She's a little girl in her teens. It's fine if you don't comfort and take care of her gently. But you arrange a lot of homework every day and criticize her all the time. Not to mention a little girl, even a man can't stand you. Don't you see that even Qin Yan is afraid of you?" Fortunately, Yungu has a good temper. Ordinary girls would have fallen out with you long ago. Speaking of this, Lady Su also felt very sad. Everyone said that she was lucky to have given birth to several good sons, but who could understand her son's pain of not being able to find a wife when he was already in his 30s? The Su family didn't like a girl who threw herself at them, but with her son's stupid appearance, he couldn't marry a girl who didn't throw herself at him. Look, it wasn't easy to find an interesting girl, but she was scared away in the blink of an eye. Naturally, young Master Qin Qin did not know that his mother was despising him in every possible way. Sitting in a chair in the hall, he lowered his eyebrows and pondered. "Eldest aunt, eldest brother, what happened?" Outside the door, Yili rushed in, followed by a displeased Prince Ding and Mo Xiuyao. Today was Su Qingfeng and Su Qingbai's wedding. Everyone stayed up late, so only eldest Madame Su and young Master Qingqin were in the Su mansion. Yili dragged Mo Xiuyao over when she heard the news sent by Madame Su. His Highness Prince Ding's displeasure at being disturbed early in the morning with his beloved wife. Looking at Su Qingqin who was sitting in the hall, Mo Xiuyao raised his eyebrows and smiled, "Isn't this young Master Qingqin? What was going on? You didn't scare the girl away, did you?" Just now, this prince seemed to have seen Shenyang coming over here. Losing someone else's daughter for no reason, this is really... Xiuyao. Yili glared at Mo Xiuyao angrily, then looked at Su Qingqin and said, "Eldest brother, don't worry, I've already sent someone to look for her. There will be news soon." Mo Xiuyao didn't care. He was happy to see Su Qingqin unhappy. Especially the intelligent young Master Qingqin, he actually scared away the girl he liked. Su Qingqin hadn't married for so many years. Was it because he didn't know how to pursue the girl he liked? Mo Xiuyao criticized in his heart. Su Qingqin nodded and smiled faintly at Yili, "Thank you." Yili shook her head and said, "Eldest brother, what are you saying? We're family, there's no need to thank me. Yungu just left, she couldn't have gone far." "That's not necessarily true." Mo Xiuyao leaned on Yili's shoulder and said with a smile, "That little girl's martial arts are very good. She's also proficient in medicine. If she doesn't want to come back, even Qi Lin may not be able to bring her back without hurting her, right?" "Oh right. Shenyang's residents lost a precious horse from the western region." Hearing his words, Su Qingqin couldn't help but frown. A precious horse from the western region could travel thousands of miles in a day. Yungu had ridden the horse for an entire night, who knew where she had gone by now? Beside her, eldest Madame Su also looked anxious. "What should we do?" Tell the people who went to be careful, don't hurt Yungu. If she doesn't want to come back, don't force her. It won't be good if she gets hurt." Yili smiled and said, "Eldest aunt, don't worry. They will know what to do." "Madam, eldest young master, Mr. Shen is here." The servant outside the door reported. Before eldest Madame Su could speak, Shenyang barged in from outside and glared fiercely at Su Qingqin. "Young Master Qingqin, where did Yungu go?" Young Master Qingqin shook his head and said, "I don't know." Shenyang was furious and pointed at Su Qingqin. "What did you say to Yungu? Why would she run away from home all of a sudden?" Although they didn't spend much time together, Shenyang already knew Yungu very well. If it wasn't for something serious, she wouldn't have left Glass City alone. After losing her parents, Yungu, who had lived alone for 3 years, cherished the new home she just got very much. Mo Xiaoyao smiled and said, young Master Qinchin said that Miss Shen is his fiancée. Maybe Miss Shen was just shy. Fiancé. Why didn't anyone know that young Master Qinchin had a fiancé? In the hall, eldest Madame Su and Shenyang were both shocked. Eldest Madame Su was pleasantly surprised, while Shenyang was shocked and angry. Young Master Qinchin stood up and stopped eldest Madame Su and Shenyang from talking. He smiled faintly and said, the most important thing now is to find Yungu. Your Highness Prince Ding, I'll have to trouble you to take care of the official business of the Prince Ding mansion during this period. Ha! Mo Xiaoyao sat up vigilantly and stared at Su Qinchin in confusion. What do you want to do? He didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling. Su Qinchin looked at him and said faintly, didn't your Highness Prince Ding say that Yungu was scared away by me? Shouldn't I go and find her? Can I pretend that I didn't say anything? His Highness Prince Ding, who went for wool and came back shorn, was extremely regretful. Chapter 11-17. In June and July, the Central Plains were unbearably hot. In Guangling City, north of the Yunlan River, a young girl dressed in yellow was strolling leisurely on the streets. Although the war had just ended not long ago, all the areas north of the Yunlan River were under the control of the Prince Ding mansion. The Dechu state, which originally had vast land, was now truly content with a small corner. The Prince Ding mansion was very efficient. In just a short 2 to 3 months, Guangling, which had not been affected by the war, had already returned to its former prosperity. The young girl dressed in yellow walked leisurely on the streets, occasionally looking here and there. Her beautiful little face was brimming with a bright smile, attracting the attention of passers-by. This young girl was Miss Yungu, who had run away from the Su mansion in Glass City. After leaving Glass City, Yungu headed south. She traveled around while practicing medicine. She lived a very comfortable life. Although she encountered some small problems, it was not difficult for her to solve them with her martial arts. This allowed this young girl, who was traveling alone for the first time since she was young, to arrive at Guangling without any obstructions. Miss, are you Miss Shen Yungu? Yungu was looking at a candy stall on the side of the street and frowning. Just as she was hesitating whether to buy it, a strange man suddenly rushed over and pulled Yungu to ask. Yungu blinked and said with some confusion, I am Shen Yungu. Who are you? How do you know my name? Miss Shen. Miss Shen, please save my mother. The man said anxiously. As he spoke, he was about to kneel on the ground. Yungu hurriedly supported him and said, don't be anxious. Speak slowly. How do you know? I can save your mother. The man said, Miss Shen's medical skills are brilliant and her heart is kind. She has saved many lives. This little one heard from others that Miss Shen came to Guangling. That's why I hurriedly chased after you. I beg Miss Shen to be merciful. Seeing his red face, Yungu hurriedly nodded and said, don't be anxious. I will definitely save your mother. You. Where is your mother? The man's face was red and he said with some shame, I was in a hurry to enter the city to find Miss Shen. I left my mother at a farmer's house outside the city. Then let's go quickly. Seeing that the man was so anxious, Yungu did not dare to delay any longer and directly walked towards the city gate. Similarly, in a tea house in Guangling City, young Master Qinchin, who was dressed in white, was sitting by the window, leisurely looking at the people coming and going on the street below. Young Master. A man dressed in gray walked up the stairs quickly. He walked to Su Qinchin's side and said in a low voice, Miss Shen has left the city again. Young Master Qinchin frowned slightly and said, she just entered the city. Why did she leave the city again? After young Master Qinchin left Glass City, he followed Yun Ji's path. However, Yun Ji's temperament was unstable and his whereabouts were erratic. Sometimes, it was normal for him to travel 200 to 300 li a day on a whim. Obviously, young Master Qinchin, who had no strength to truss a chicken, was unable to follow her torment. As a result, they only managed to catch up to Yungu a few days ago. However, Su Qinchin did not go to see Yungu immediately. Instead, she led her men and followed behind her from afar. Yesterday, Su Qinchin guessed that Yungu might come to Guangling. Hence, they arrived at Guangling ahead of time. They did not expect that Yungu would leave the city before they even saw her. Just now, someone on the street came to Miss Shin to seek medical treatment. Miss Shin followed him out. The man in cloth reported in a low voice, "Someone has already followed her. Seek medical treatment." Young Master Qinchin frowned. Along the way, whenever Yungu met someone who needed help, she would lend a helping hand. For her medical skills to be praised by Shenyang, it was evident that she was indeed very good. Along the way, there were some commoners, but, seeing young Master Qinchin's expression darken, the guard hurriedly said, "Young Master, do not worry. Miss Shin's skills are not weak. Furthermore, there are guards secretly following her. Nothing should happen to her." Su Qinchin thought for a while and stood up. "Let's go over and take a look." Yun Ji's martial arts were indeed not bad, but she basically had no experience in the Jianghu. Otherwise, she would not have been followed all the way without being aware of it. Su Qinchin always felt that the person who stopped her on the street to seek medical treatment was somewhat strange. Even if Yungu had left some reputation in the places she passed, it would not have spread so quickly. And with Yun Ji's itinerary, it was even more impossible for the other party to follow behind her with a patient. Yes. Seeing young Master Qinchin's serious expression, the guard also knew that something was going to happen. He hurriedly responded and followed Su Qinchin downstairs. Outside Guangling City, Yungu followed the man who was seeking medical treatment. The further they went, the more remote they became. Then, she stopped in her tracks with some doubts. Miss Shin, what's wrong? Where is she?" The man turned back to look at Yungu and smiled apologetically. Yungu looked at him and frowned. "Where is your mother?" "There is no one around here." The man's expression stiffened. "She's right in front." "Miss Shin, let's hurry." Yungu hesitated for a moment, but still nodded and continued to follow the man forward. After walking for a while, Yungu finally felt that something was wrong. "Where are you taking me?" Along the way, Yungu had also encountered some things. Naturally, there were not only good people in this world. Although she did not think too much at the beginning because of the man's anxious and pleading face, if there really was a patient, why would she be in such a remote and difficult-to-find place? The man turned back and chuckled at Yungu. A malicious smile appeared on his originally honest and sincere face, instantly making him look repulsive. "Heh, Miss Shin, won't you know if you follow me? Why are you asking so much?" "I'm not going," Yungu said in a low voice. "I want to go back." "You don't have anyone who wants me to see a doctor." "Although I don't have any illness to see." "Miss Shin, don't you think this young master has been ill for a long time?" A somewhat oily voice came from behind, and a few men suddenly appeared on the originally empty mountain road. The leader was a skinny youth. That person's face was waxy yellow, and he was as thin as a match. His pair of turbid eyes carried a hint of wickedness. His originally ordinary appearance had a hint of wretchedness, making one feel extremely disgusted with just one look. However, Yungu silently glanced at the few men in front of her. These people were not ordinary people. Even that skinny and sallow man knew some martial arts. "Move aside, I want to go back." Yun-guk frowned and said with some displeasure. She was not someone who did not have any temper. She kindly came to see a doctor but was deceived. It would be a lie to say that she was not angry. Move aside. Everyone looked at each other and laughed. Miss Shen, this young master has been following you for half a day in order to see you. If I let you go back like this, wouldn't this young master suffer a huge loss? That skinny man stared at Yun-guk lecherously and smiled. This young master sincerely wants to see Miss Shen's illness. Why don't Miss Shen stay with this young master for a few days? Chapter 11-18. Meeting his cloudy eyes, Yun-guk felt a wave of disgust. She glanced at him and said, "You're not sick. You just need to cultivate your mind properly." This man's face was thin and his eyes were cloudy. It was obvious that he had overindulged in debauchery. After speaking, Yun-guk no longer paid attention to these people. She turned around and walked back the way she came. When the man saw that Yun-guk did not give him any face, he could not help but be furious. He waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and invite this beauty back to be my guest." Yes. The people around him responded in unison and went forward to surround Yun-guk. Be careful. Don't hurt this young master's beauty. This person was originally a young master from a famous family near Guangling. However, he did not have any skills and relied on his father's accumulation to indulge in debauchery. He was also lustful and would occasionally kidnap women. However, the heavens were high and the emperor was far away. Now that the world had just settled down, no one cared. When he went out early this morning, he saw Yun-guk treating the refugees in a small town. This lustful guy actually did not hesitate to follow her for dozens of miles before coming up with a way to trick Yun-guk. Yun-guk wasn't a pushover either. She glared at the crowd in displeasure and slapped a man who was closing in on her. Although the people following the man were not experts, they had learned a few kung fu moves. Seeing that Yun-guk made a move, the others also rushed over to surround Yun-guk. When the thin man saw that Yun-guk actually knew martial arts, he could not help but become more excited. "You actually know martial arts? Good. Hurry, bring this little beauty back for this young master. This young master wants to take her as a concubine." Yun-guk was so angry that her face turned red. She raised her hand and a dark light shot towards the man. That man also knew some martial arts. When he saw the hidden weapon shooting towards him, he quickly dodged to the side. When he turned around and saw the darts nailed to the tree, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. "Trash! Hurry up. You can't even beat a woman," the man roared. Although these men were tall and strong, they were definitely not Yun-ji's opponent in terms of martial arts. During the fight, they looked at each other. Two of them looked at Yun-guk. One of them took out a bag and threw it in Yun-ji's direction. Yun-guk was shocked. Tendon softening powder. Yun-guk was a medical student and naturally knew the power of this muscle weakening powder. However, she was entangled by a few people. Although she tried her best to avoid it, she still got some of it. At that moment, he couldn't care less about these people. Yun-guk waved his palm and forced a man to retreat, then flew into the distance. She was very clear in her heart that once the muscle-weakening powder took effect, she would really be at the mercy of others. "What are you waiting for? A bunch of trash." Seeing that the duck that had been in his mouth had flown away, the man immediately became furious and angrily rebuked. "Young master. That girl doesn't seem to be an ordinary person," one of them whispered. Although they didn't have much experience, a person who could still run after being poisoned by the muscle-weakening powder, and her martial arts were so powerful, no matter how they looked at it, she didn't seem like an ordinary person. What if he really offended someone he shouldn't offend? this young master doesn't care about her. The man sneered. In Guangling, is there anyone more powerful than my Huang family? Wait till she becomes this young master's person. Seeing him like this, these guards naturally didn't dare to object and hurriedly chased in the direction that Yungu escaped. As Yungu used her qigong to fly in the direction of Guangling City, she clearly felt that she was sweating and her body was somewhat weak, unable to exert any strength. It was very obvious that because of her mad dash, the muscle-weakening powder took effect even more violently. But now, she didn't have any antidote on hand that could cure the muscle-weakening powder. Gradually, even her qigong couldn't be used anymore. Yungu finally fell to the side of the road in exhaustion. Her entire body was so weak that she couldn't even lift her hands. Damn it! Yungu couldn't help but curse those bastards in her heart. At the same time, she was somewhat anxious. She remembered. On the way here just now, she seemed to have seen some antidote. Yungu tried hard to recall as she forced herself to stand up and walk towards the direction in her memory. But just as she stood up, she fell down again. Very quickly, those few men caught up again. Seeing Yungu fall to the ground, that thin man laughed complacently. Little beauty, run, why aren't you running? Yungu glared fiercely at him. You bastard, despicable. The man laughed even more complacently. Bastard. Despicable. This is all your fault. If not for you not being obedient, this young master wouldn't want to be so rude to a beauty. This young master's family is rich. As long as you obediently follow this young master back, only you can enjoy endless glory and wealth. Who cares about your family's wealth? Yungu said disdainfully. She also had a lot of money. Sister Lee said that the money that father left for her was enough for her to live a life of luxury. That man had long lost his patience. Seeing Yungu like this, he couldn't help but sneer. Don't care. When the time comes, you won't say that. Come, bring this little beauty back for this young master. Two of the men who accompanied Yungu stepped forward to pull her up. Yungu bit the tip of her tongue hard. Taking advantage of the pain, she threw out a hidden weapon with a wave of her hand. Then, taking advantage of the time when everyone was dodging the hidden weapon, she used the little bit of strength that she had just accumulated to stand up and run forward. Catch her for me. The man's exasperated voice came from behind. Yungu tried her best to run forward. However, no matter how strong a person's willpower was, sometimes they couldn't withstand the effects of the drug. Because she used too much strength, Yungu clearly felt that her vision was blacking out. When she stopped again, not only would she be weak, she would also completely faint. So, she desperately told herself not to stop, not to stop, stop. Damn girl. Those people caught up with her again. Yungu couldn't help but feel a little desperate. She was just a little girl who hadn't experienced many things. It was already very rare for her to be able to persevere until now. Involuntarily, tears fell from the corner of her eyes. Yungu also fell to the ground again. Woo-woo, you're so stupid and still running around. If I didn't come to find you, what would you do? A soft voice with a touch of helplessness sounded. In Yunji's ears, it was no different from the sound of nature. Yungu was thrown into a slightly cold and fragrant embrace. For a moment, she couldn't help but be a little stunned. She raised her head and just happened to look into a pair of gentle and calm eyes. However, that pair of eyes was now filled with a faint coldness and waves. Su Qinchin, is it really you? Who else can it be if not me? Su Qinchin sighed helplessly. Looking at her struggling to hold on, he could only sigh with pity. He stroked her hair and said, "It's me. It's okay now. Good girl, sleep." Yungu only felt her heart was at ease. She leaned in his arms and slowly closed her eyes. Chapter 11:19. The few men chasing after Yungu caught up and saw Yungu lying in the arms of a man dressed in white. The man was dressed in white and his long black hair was draped behind him. When they looked up, they saw a pair of calm eyes that were distant and deep. But at this moment, that pair of eyes carried a faint coldness. Such a handsome and otherworldly man was rarely seen even in a big southern city like Guangling, let alone in such a remote rural area. Everyone could not help but stare blankly. Who is it? Put down this young master's beauty. The thin man came back to his senses and stepped forward to shout. He had been eyeing this little beauty in front of him for half a day and was finally about to get her. How could he allow someone to snatch her away? Although Guangling had produced beauties since ancient times, a beauty like this little beauty was still hard to come by. Young Master Qingchen looked up and glanced at the crowd indifferently. Who are you? You've got guts. The thin man was stunned and quickly sneered. This young master sees that you've got guts. Meddling in other people's business depends on whether you have the ability or not. Listen carefully, this young master is the eldest young master of Guangling's Huang family. In Guangling, no one dares to go against this young master. Originally, seeing Su Qingchen's extraordinary bearing, the man was still a little hesitant. But seeing that he was dressed in white and was an ordinary person who did not even have the strength to truss a chicken, the man's arrogance rose again. In Guangling, although the Huang family could not be said to be able to cover the sky with one hand, their power was great. It was definitely not something a weak scholar from outside could rival. Su Qingchen bent over and picked up Yungu. He said indifferently, Huang family, is it? I'll remember it. Seeing Su Qingchen about to leave with Yungu, that young master Huang was furious. How dare you? Stop. What are you waiting for? Hearing their master's order, the few men who followed naturally swarmed forward. But Su Qingchen acted as if he did not see them at all. He turned around and walked in the direction of Guangling. Being ignored by a person who did not even have the strength to truss a chicken, the crowd could not help but be angry. One of them threw a punch at Su Qingchen's back. Unexpectedly, a strong wind blew. Before that man could touch Su Qingchen's clothes, he hugged his fist and fell to the ground, wailing in pain. Everyone couldn't help but jump in fright and look around vigilantly. Unknowingly, several men in gray appeared on the hillside on both sides of the road. He glanced at the crowd coldly before landing in front of Su Qingchen. Young master. Su Qingchen looked down at the sleeping Yungu in his arms and said indifferently, bring her back to Guangling. Also, get the Guangling governor to come see me. Understood, the gray-robed man replied in a low voice. With a wave of his hand, a few people behind him neatly took down the crowd and tied them up like dumplings. Young Master Huang stared at Su Qingchen in shock. Someone who could casually ask the governor to meet him was definitely not an ordinary person. You. Who are you? Su Qingchen glanced at him calmly, then turned around and left with Yungu in her arms. The guards behind him looked sympathetically at the emaciated and sickly young Master Huang. Young Master Qingchen had been following Miss Shen everywhere and had lost her several times. He was already in a bad mood. This fellow even sought his own death by falling into young Master Qingchen's hands. He was really too pitiful. In the backyard of an inconspicuous inn in Guangling City, a few people dressed in extraordinary attire were standing in the middle of the courtyard, waiting anxiously. At the door not far away, a few gray-robed guards stood expressionlessly, as if they did not notice the uneasiness of these people. The leader was dressed in the attire of a third-rank official. There was already a lot of white hair on his temples. Mixed with his black hair, it looked like a head of gray hair. He was supposed to be a high-ranking official in Guangling City. But now, he was frowning and looking uneasy as if the sky was about to fall. Beside him was a middle-aged man who was dressed luxuriously and had a stout appearance. Behind the middle-aged man were a few men and women of different ages. But he obviously could not understand the governor's worries. He only looked anxiously at the guard standing not far away and frowned. "Sir, my son." The man looked at the Guangling governor and frowned. After hearing that his son had been captured, he had planned to send a message to the guards to see who was so daring to behave atrociously in Guangling City. But he did not expect to receive a message from the governor before he left, asking him to immediately rush to this inn. He even specially reminded him to be respectful. He immediately understood that the person his son had offended was not an ordinary person. But when he saw the governor's attitude, he did not think much of it. With the Huang family's influence in Guangling, as long as it was not Prince Ding and Princess Ding, who could do anything to them? There was a saying that a strong dragon could not suppress a snake in its old haunts. Didn't this newly appointed governor have to be respectful to them, the old family of Guangling? The Guangling governor frowned and looked at old Master Huang with an unfriendly expression. After offending young Master Qinchin, he did not know if the Huang family had really committed too many sins. Outsiders who did not know the situation might think that young Master Qinchin was gentle and refined and was a soft-hearted and modest gentleman. But as an official from the Prince Ding mansion, how could they not know? 2 years ago, Prince Ding and Princess Consort were away on expeditions all year round. All the affairs of the Prince Ding mansion were handled by young Master Qinchin. There were many old officials and generals under the Prince Ding mansion who were proud and arrogant. If young Master Qinchin only had wisdom and no iron fist, how could he control these people? If Prince Ding and Princess Consort were really here, he might be able to plead for mercy from Princess Consort. Now that he had offended young Master Qinchin. Looking at the clueless old Master Huang, the Guangling prefecture chief shook his head in his heart and ignored him. He only silently calculated in his heart whether he had overlooked anything during his days in power in Guangling. Seeing the governor's expression, old Master Huang instinctively felt that something was not right. But he could not think of anyone in Guangling that the Huang family could not afford to offend. Even if it were those generals who controlled a large number of troops, the Huang family's wealth could deal with them. Besides, the person who brought the letter back had said that the one who had captured his son was a weak young master. Everyone outside the door had different thoughts. Inside the room, young Master Qinchin did not care about the anxious mood of the crowd. He sat leisurely by the bed and looked at the quiet and delicate face of the sleeping girl. The sleeping girl was more beautiful and pure than when she was awake. One of her hands even stretched out to tug at the corner of the quilt. She slept very sweetly, like a little doll who had not experienced much of the world. Raising his hand to pinch the girl's red cheeks, young Master Qinchin laughed helplessly and said in a low voice, "Isn't it good to stay by my side? Why must you run around? If I am not here this time, what will you do? Since you are born stupid, you should be obedient. I will not despise you. Your little face has lost weight. You are really a little fool." The sleeping girl's slightly curled eyelashes fluttered slightly. Young Master Qinchin calmly withdrew his hand and said with a smile, "Still want to pretend to be asleep?" The sleeping girl immediately opened her eyes. Rubbing her red cheeks, she looked at the handsome young master in front of her and laughed dryly. "Su Qinchin, why are you here?" You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.